After the divorce, I married a billionaire, but my bad ex-husband was out of control. Chapter 1, I don't want you anymore. Yuanin stood outside the private room, listening to everything inside. Her heart ached. The Fu Nanchun whom she once loved so deeply had become so strange. She pushed open the door, and the noise in the private room disappeared immediately. Fu Nanchun saw her, frowned, and did not hide his disgust. "What are you doing here? Xie Huai, did you bring her here?" His tone was cold, as if he was questioning a stranger. Yuanin did not back down and said calmly, "Fu Nanchun, I have already called the police about the drugging at the party and the spreading of my photos." As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere in the private room froze instantly. Several people looked at each other with panic in their eyes. Someone immediately stood up and tried to persuade her. And then Brother Nanchun only did this because he was too angry. "If you call the police, it will cause too much trouble." Yuanin remained indifferent. She looked at Fu Nanchun firmly and said, "I admit that I want to save our relationship, but I will never be so mean as to drug you. With your ability, it is not difficult to find out the truth." Although her voice was calm, every word seemed to speak of the pain buried deep in her heart. "I was reluctant to let go because I was afraid that one day you would regain your memory and blame me for giving up our relationship so easily. But now, I'm too tired. I'm letting go." She took out a divorce agreement and gently placed it on the table. "I tried hard, but I'm really too tired. So Fu Nanchun, I don't want you anymore." Fu Nanchun's eyes moved from the divorce agreement to Yuanin's face, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. He thought she would keep pestering him, but he didn't expect that she was really willing to let go. "Once the police clear my name, we'll go get the divorce certificate." Yuanin's voice was firm. Although tears welled up in her eyes, she remained calm. She raised the wine glass on the table, held back her sobs, and whispered, "Happy 26th birthday." Then she drank the wine in the glass and turned away. There was silence in the room until she disappeared. Then everyone came to their senses. Someone picked up the divorce agreement and was surprised to find that Yuanin had chosen to leave the house with nothing and was even willing to pay back 2 years of medical expenses. "This is the best birthday present that Brother Nanchun has ever received," someone joked. Ever since Yuanin came between him and Yuji, he has been looking forward to the moment when he has nothing to do with Yuanin. But for some reason, he was not as happy as he thought he would be after receiving the divorce agreement. Amid the congratulations from everyone, Fu Nanchun's phone vibrated, and the caller ID showed Yuji. All the unhappiness was instantly thrown behind him. He answered the phone with a smile on his face and walked out. "Xiaoguai, you're here. I'll come down to pick you up." Chapter 2 Fu Nanchun, you are crazy. Xie Zihuai finally caught up with Yuanin at the door of the bar, stood in front of her, and asked anxiously, "Have you moved out of the apartment?" Yuanin lowered her head, buried half of her face in her scarf, and responded softly. She knew that since she had decided to give up Fu Nanchun, she would never stay in that apartment full of memories again. "Then where do you live?" Xie Zihuai didn't give her a chance to lie and said in a low voice, "I went to Haicheng University yesterday. I heard that the Yu family blocked you, and you couldn't even stay in the dormitory. Did you go to the Lyn family?" When the Lyn family was mentioned, Yuanin's heart was suddenly stabbed. She looked up at Xie Zihuai, her voice calm but distant. "Thank you for speaking for me just now, but I understand that you and I are not from the same world. Since I am no longer pestering Fu Nanchun, I will naturally not disturb his friends anymore." Xie Zihuai was stunned. He didn't expect Yuanin's words to be so hurtful. He subconsciously grabbed her arm and stopped her from leaving. Pain flashed in his eyes. "Do you have to talk like this?" Just as the two were in a stalemate, Do Yuji's voice came from a distance. "Brother Zihuai, senior sister Yu." Yuanin pulled her hand back, handed Xie Zihuai the coat that he had dropped, and then calmly said to Do Yuji, "Thank you for trusting me. As for the drugging, I have already called the police." Do Yuji was stunned, then whispered, "Does Brother Nanchun know?" Yuanin smiled faintly. "No need, I gave up." As soon as the voice fell, Fu Nanchun's voice came from above, "Little cutie." He hurried over and held Do Yuji's hand, fearing that Yuanin would say something else. Seeing that Do Yuji was about to leave, he shouted unwillingly, "Today is my birthday. Once a year stay." But Do Yuji shook his head and said softly, "Wait until you recover your memory, then make a decision." Fu Nanchun's fury completely exploded. He rushed to Yuanin and pushed her angrily. "What did you say to Yuji again? Why are you so disgusting?" Yuanin fell into the cold water. A sharp pain came from her forehead, and blood flowed down her face. Xie Zihui shouted. Fu Nanshan, you are crazy. But Fu Nanshan's eyes were full of disgust. Why didn't you die? If you died, I would be free. Chapter 3, Who Would Dare to Touch Her? Yu Ainan's eyes were fixed coldly on Fu Nanshan, and the chill in her heart gradually spread. The thing I regret most is bringing you out of Yujia village. The spawn of a rapist is indeed dirty and despicable. Before Fu Nanshan could finish his words, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his head. He staggered and hit the tree trunk, hot blood flowing from his forehead. Yu Ainan stood there, the broken brick in her hand still trembling slightly. Her face and hands were covered in blood, but her eyes were frighteningly cold. Xie Zihui and Do Yuji stood by, dumbfounded, not expecting her to do anything. Fu Nanshan were even. Her voice was hoarse, and her eyes were firm. Fu Nanshan was stunned for a moment, and a vague memory suddenly flashed through his mind. Once, next to the teaching building under the setting sun, a girl in school uniform smiled and said to him, Fu Nanshan, we are even. He felt a familiar throbbing, but the picture quickly disappeared. Fu Nanshan came to his senses and touched his head. His hands were covered in blood, and anger instantly surged in his heart. He was about to explode when he suddenly heard a calm voice behind him. Uncle Lyn. He turned around reluctantly. Lyn Jinrong, who was standing behind him, was wearing gold-rimmed glasses and had a calm aura. Completely different from Fu Nanshan's youthful and vigorous appearance, Lyn Jinrong exuded a pressure that could not be ignored. He held Yu Ainan and said in a deep voice, Go to the hospital. Not long after, in the emergency room, Yu Ainan sat quietly. The nurse asked her to take off her wet coat and scarf, but she just shook her head stubbornly. Take it off. Lyn Jinrong, who was standing aside, ordered in a low voice, with a tone that did not allow for refusal. Fu Nanshan, who had just been bandaged, stood outside the door and vaguely saw the bruises on Yu Ainan's neck, and his heart was suddenly shocked. He didn't expect that his push would hurt her so badly. Lyn Jinrong looked at Fu Nanshan coldly, with a cold tone. Who gave you the courage to touch her? Fu Nanshan was filled with humiliation, but he was powerless to refute and could only bow his head and admit his mistake. Under Lyn Jinrong's powerful aura, Fu Nanshan felt a chill in his heart. He knew that he had to give Lyn Jinrong an explanation today. Chapter 4 Not Now. Yuan quietly pulled a chair and sat opposite Lyn Jinrong. Unlike other people, Lyn Jinrong was gentle with her. What's wrong with the injury on your body? Fu Nanshan pushed me and hit the rockery. Yu Ainan said in a flat tone, as if she was talking about someone else's business. I'm not talking about the wound on my head. Lyn Jinrong interrupted her with a sharp look. Yu Ainan was slightly stunned and continued. The Yu family asked me to pay for Yu Baodong to buy a house, but when I didn't get the money, they took action at the school gate. Lyn Jinrong frowned slightly, looking at the bruises on her neck, and after a moment of silence, she said, What I said 8 years ago still counts. If you are willing to let go of Fu Nanshan, I can arrange for you to go abroad. Yu Ainan pondered for a moment and responded calmly. Sending me abroad now will not do you any good, right? Fu Nanshan has already forgotten me and has fallen in love with someone else. Lyn Jinrong said calmly. You are related to the Lyn family by blood, so things won't be that simple. Yu Ainan's expression froze, and she said firmly, I have nothing to do with the Lyn family. I don't need the Lyn family's help. Lyn Jinrong stared at her in silence, and finally gently pushed his glasses and reminded her in a low voice. You are in a situation now, and you are in constant trouble. If you don't accept the help of the Lyn family, how are you going to move forward? Yu Ainan said slowly, I am very grateful for everything the Lyn family and the Fu family have done for me, but I will not owe them anything anymore. After the divorce, I will leave. Fu Nanshan, who was outside the door, frowned when he heard this and turned to leave. He was upset. Was Yu Ainan really going to let go completely? But when he thought of her words, he just wanted to get the divorce certificate quickly and end it all. The next day, just as Fu Nanshan was about to discuss divorce with Yu Ainan, he heard Lei Mingyue's voice in the ward. Juju only wanted to help you, so she drugged Nanshan's wine. She did it for you. Yu Ainan sneered. For me? Can a simple sentence of for my own good mess up my life? Chapter 5 As He Wish. Lei Mingyue and his sister Lei Mingzhu are childhood friends of Fu Nanshan and grew up with Yu Ainan. Lei Mingzhu has always supported Yu Ainan and Fu Nanshan, but this drugging incident has hit Yu Ainan hard. She clutched the quilt tightly and said in a cold tone, Why doesn't she explain it herself? Lei Mingyue sighed. Juju knows she is wrong and is too ashamed to see you. And then, you no longer care about Fu Nanshan's opinion, so why not withdraw the case? Yu Ainin sneered, her voice firm. Not caring about him doesn't mean that Lei Mingzhu can get away with it easily. Fu Nanshan's public apology is to let me move on with my life. I have no education. I can't get a foothold. How can I live? Her eyes were full of pain. I don't want to owe anyone, and I won't let my future be ruined by others. Lei Mingyue offered compensation with a guilty conscience. I can arrange for you to join the Lei family enterprise and sign a lifelong employment contract. I don't need your compensation. I just want Fu Nanshan's apology. Yu Ainin's tone was cold and hard. Before he finished speaking, Fu Nanshan pushed the door open and walked in, his eyes cold. As long as you get a divorce certificate from me today, I will publicly apologize tomorrow. Yu Ainin looked up and responded calmly. When Fu Nanshan was unwilling to accept her indifference, and he became angry. Now, immediately, Yu Ainin stood up calmly. Okay, I'll change my clothes. Her calmness made Fu Nanshan inexplicably irritated, but Lei Mingyue did not expect that the matter could be resolved so smoothly. Fu Nanshan stared at Yu Ainin and sneered. Your tricks are really innovative. When they went to Yu Ainin's residence together, Fu Nanshan didn't expect that she lived in such a simple place. The narrow alleys were lined with vendors on both sides, and cars could not enter. His anger was ignited again. Chapter 6, Getting a Divorce Certificate. Melted snow accumulated in the potholes, and mud splashed as footsteps passed by. Yu Ainin pushed open the car door and said, I'll get it myself. You wait. Fu Nanshan unbuckled his seatbelt and said coldly, Let's go together, otherwise you will run away. He and Lei Mingyue followed Yu Ainin, avoiding the mud on the road, frowning at the crowded and dilapidated shantytown. Why do you live in a place like this? Lei Mingyue frowned. It's so messy. How can it be safe? Not bad. Yu Ainin replied calmly. She didn't want to explain more. Staying in a hotel was too expensive, and signing a long-term contract to rent a house was unnecessary. She didn't plan to stay for long, so she could only live in this cheap little place. When they arrived at a dilapidated wooden door, Fu Nanshan frowned even more. Yu Ainin did not invite them in, but opened the door to get the ID card. The house was simple and small, without even a bathroom, but it was clean and tidy. After leaving the shantytown, the three of them went to the Civil Affairs Bureau in silence. The formalities were handled very smoothly, and Fu Nanshan felt incredible as he held the little red book. The divorce certificate has been obtained, Yu Ainin asked calmly. Can I see you publicly apologize tomorrow? Fu Nanshan came back to his senses and said coldly, Okay. Yu Ainin nodded and stood up. After apologizing, I will leave Haiqing immediately and will not appear again. She turned and left with a firm step. Lei Mingyue offered to provide her with a place to stay, but she refused. Fu Nanshan looked at her receding back and felt inexplicably irritated. Yu Ainin sat at the bus stop, looking down at the divorce certificate, recalling the promise Fu Nanshan had made, and her heart was cold. Those memories seemed like yesterday, but everything was over. She put away the divorce certificate and was about to book a plane ticket when a black car stopped in front of her, and Lyn Jinrong's stern face appeared behind the car window. Get in the car, he said calmly. Yu Ainin hesitated for a moment and finally got into the car, feeling uneasy. The news of her divorce from Fu Nanshan had quietly spread. Chapter 7, Just One Night. Yu Ainin deleted Xie Zihuai from WeChat, leaving only a few familiar people in her contact list. Annan and Huanyin, Professor Dong, and Lyn Jinrong. Her eyes stopped on Lyn Jinrong's profile picture, and her heart moved slightly. How much did the hospital cost yesterday? I'll transfer it to you via WeChat. Yu Ainin turned to look at Lyn Jinrong, who was reading documents in the car, and then said, And your tie is also dirty. I will compensate you for it. At this moment, the car suddenly turned left rapidly, and the phone flew out of her hand and flew towards Lyn Jinrong. Yu Ainin subconsciously reached out to grab it, but it happened to fall on his legs, and an embarrassed blush immediately climbed onto her face. Lyn Jinrong calmly handed the phone back, and a deep voice sounded in her ear. It's okay. Yu Ainin sat up straight and avoided his gaze. The car drove smoothly into the villa area, and Lyn Jinrong said calmly, Where you live now is not safe. Let Uncle Lee move your luggage here. I'll leave Haiqing tomorrow, so there's no need to bother me. Yu Ainin insisted. It's just one night. Lyn Jinrong's tone left no room for doubt. Yu Ainin had no choice but to obey. Arriving at the villa, Lyn Jinrong quickly went into the study to handle work, and Yu Ainin had dinner alone. At this time, Fu Nanshan's apology statement quickly appeared on the bulletin board of Haicheng University and was posted on social media, causing an uproar. Seeing this statement, Yu Ainen's heart was calm, and she just wanted to calm it down as soon as possible. She didn't unpack her luggage and simply washed up and prepared to go to bed. When she went downstairs, she saw Lyn Jinrong standing in the kitchen and making a phone call. He was wearing loose home clothes. His black hair hung wetly in front of his forehead, and his unbuttoned clothes revealed his strong chest. His figure looked lazy and charming. The Lin family does not need to marry into the Su family, Lyn Jinrong said calmly, the cigarette in his hand curling up in the air. Noticing Yu Ainen's presence, Lyn Jinrong glanced at her indifferently and said in a low voice, "Why haven't you slept yet? I'll come down to drink some water." Yu Ainen replied softly and quickly took the water and left. Her pace quickened, and she felt a little uneasy in her heart. But Lyn Jinrong remained calm, watching her back disappear at the stairs, and fell into memories of the past in deep thought. When they first met, he was 15 years old, and Yu Ainen was 10 years old. At the gate of the police station in the pouring rain, Yu Ainen, who was deliberately forgotten by the Lin family, hid behind a tree and secretly watched her biological mother being pushed into a luxury car, but she refused to go to the Lin family to live with her biological mother. Chapter 8: You Have to Believe in Me. When they met again, Lyn Jinrong was 17 years old, and Yu Ainen was 12 years old. In order to save Fu Nanshan, she was stabbed twice and lay on the hospital bed, calmly rejecting the Lin family's arrangement again. Her small body was stubborn and firm. People who are not expected should stay away from other people's lives, be themselves, and not have unnecessary expectations. Please don't interfere in my life, Lin family and you. Lyn Jinrong's reluctance was slowly relieved by her calm words. From then on, he began to pay silent attention to this strong girl. She shone brightly, became a genius in mathematical Olympiad, a gold medalist in international competitions, and walked at the top of Haicheng, and he watched her every step, including her vigorous love with Fu Nanshan. Just after Yu Ainen returned to her room, her phone vibrated rapidly. It was Xie Zihuai calling. Ainen, something happened. Aunt and pushed Fu Nanshan and Do Yuji down the stairs at the airport. Fu Nanshan wants to sue her for intentional homicide. Yu Ainen's heart sank. Ainen was timid and afraid of things. How could she do such a thing? She asked anxiously. How is Do Yuji? Xie Zihuai advised her not to intervene, but Yu Ainen hung up the phone and rushed to the police station immediately. She had to find out the truth of the matter. The scene in the video made Yu Ainen even more anxious. Black fans besieged Do Yuji. Fu Nanshan protected her, and the two fell down the stairs, but Ainen was pushed forward and hit Fu Nanshan's arm. This accident has become the focus of public opinion. Arriving at the police station, Yu Ainen saw Aunt and cowering in the corner. She held her hand tightly and said, "Ainen, I know you are right. I watched the video. Now tell me, why were you at the airport?" Annie cried and explained that the Yu family forced her to appear on the family search program, and she came to defend Yu Ainen. She brought old photos with her to remind Fu Nanshan of their past, but she was accidentally involved in this storm. Yu Ainen's heart tightened. Things were far more complicated than she had imagined, and Fu Nanshan's amnesia might be the key to this storm. Chapter 9: Revenge. Annen learned about Fu Nanshan's amnesia through her adopted daughter. Yu Ainen was lying in the police station, comforting the anxious Annen. "I will go to the hospital to see the injured first, and then find a way to get you out. Don't worry." Annen cried bitterly. "I wanted to help you, but I always cause you trouble. I'm just afraid that the Yu family will cause trouble for you, or even find your mother." Yu Ainen held her hand tightly and comforted her. "No, don't be afraid. I'm here." After leaving the police station, Xie Zihuai advised, "Shouldn't you mention the show Searching for Relatives to Lyn Jinrong? Once the show is broadcast, the relationship between Uncle Lin and you will be made public, and only he can stop this." Yu Ainen refused coldly. "Thank you for telling me the situation today. I won't bother you next time." Xie Zihuai eagerly grabbed her hand. "You divorced Fu Nanshan, and you also want to break up with me? Is it just because he and I are childhood friends?" Yu Ainen opened the car door calmly. "Get out of the way." Afterwards, she went to the hospital alone and heard the news from Dr. Xie Yinqing. Do Yuji and Fu Nanshan are both fine. Their ankle dislocations have been reset, and Nanshan only has some external injuries. Yu Ainen breathed a sigh of relief and sat in the hospital garden to think. Should she contact Fu Nanshan to explain Ann's matter? Or should she wait and see? As she was hesitating, she suddenly heard a familiar voice. Is that Insufin Yu Ainen's adoptive mother? Do Yuji's cousin whispered behind the bench. Yu Ainen was shocked. Do Yuji's cousin was the one who took the indecent photos of her. She hid in the shadows and heard his words. Yu Ainen will definitely come to ask you to let that in go. You can't be soft-hearted. You must avenge my sister. Fu Nanshan did not respond, but frowned deeply with cold eyes. Chapter 10 Foster Mother. As Fu Nanshan listened to Yi Changming's words, his brows furrowed deeper and deeper, and he flicked the ash from his cigarette impatiently. If you hadn't posted her photos all over Haicheng University and threatened my sister to leave, Yu Ainen would probably have lived a life worse than death. Yu Ainen hid under the bamboo shadows, clutching her phone tightly, her eyes sore. It turned out that Fu Nanshan's purpose of posting her photos all over the place was to threaten Do Yuji to leave. She felt a chill in her heart. How ridiculous. So, what do you want to say? Fu Nanshan asked coldly. Yi Changming approached and said with a sinister smile, "We will drug you in and then let Xie Zihuai come to help her. Why does she have to bother you afterwards? This time we can make you get rid of her completely." Fu Nanshan didn't say anything, but his cell phone rang. It was Do Yuji. He immediately responded gently, "Little darling, I'll be right up." After that, he hurried away, no longer paying attention to Yi Changming's proposal. Yu Ainen was silent behind the bench, feeling hopeless. She held her phone tightly, wanting to call Fu Nanshan, but hesitated. Over the years, had she really understood Fu Nanshan? She was not sure if he would really listen to Yi Changming's advice. Finally, Yu Ainen made the call. Fu Nanshan answered coldly. She briefly explained the reason why Aunt and came to Haicheng and emphasized that this incident was just an accident. Unexpectedly, Fu Nanshan sneered. "Yu Ainen, you have so many accidents. Meet at Junyu Hotel at 7 o'clock tomorrow night to explain. Otherwise, I will let your adoptive mother go to jail." Yu Ainen hung up the phone silently, feeling empty inside. She was no longer the girl who had hoped for Fu Nanshan. The next morning, Do Yuji called and said softly, "Sister Yu, I know you didn't instigate what happened yesterday. Are you really getting divorced?" "Yeah," she responded. After a brief silence, Do Yuji sighed, as if she wanted to have a heart-to-heart talk with Yu Ainen. "But senior sister Yu, I'm still very scared. I love brother Nanshan and want to be with him, but I'm also afraid that one day he will remember your relationship." Chapter 11 Show. "Ms. Do," Yu Ainen said calmly, "I'm not your boyfriend, so I can't give you a sense of security. But I've decided to give up something, and I won't look back even if I die. You can rest assured about that." Do Yuji bit her lip, feeling a little helpless. "I'm sorry, senior sister Yu, I just can't find anyone to talk to, so I'm telling you this. As for your adoptive mother, I'll talk to Nanshan and ask him to drop the case, so you don't have to worry." Yu Ainen breathed a sigh of relief and asked, "Do I still need to go to Junyu Hotel in the afternoon?" Nanshan said that if I don't go, he will put Annan in jail. Do Yuji was stunned. "What? I didn't know he had this plan. I will talk to him. Senior Yu, don't take it to heart. Nanshan is actually a hard-mouthed but soft-hearted person." "Thank you." After expressing her gratitude, Yu Ainen proposed to cover Do Yuji's hospital expenses. Although Do Yuji declined, she finally agreed. After hanging up the phone, Yu Ainen felt a little relieved. However, not long after, she received a call from the Looking for Relatives program team, inviting her to the show. The program team hoped that she could provide some information about her biological mother and appear on the show with Yu Baodong. Yu Ainen did not agree immediately, considering the trouble and waves that the program might bring, especially the heated discussion on the internet caused by the Do Yuji incident. She knew that she had to clarify the truth before things became more complicated. So she put forward two conditions. The program team must clarify Aunt Anne's identity and release the complete airport video, and avoid disturbing her grandfather. The program team quickly agreed and subsequently issued a clarification announcement, confirming that Annie and came to Haicheng at the invitation of the program team, and released the full video of Annie and being pushed at the airport, proving that Annie did not deliberately push Do Yuji. This move immediately attracted public attention, and the direction of public opinion began to reverse. In the afternoon, Fu Nanshan called with obvious anger. "What did you say to Yuji?" Yu Ainen replied calmly. She called to confirm whether we were really divorced. I told her the truth and promised that I would never look back. The only sound on the other end of the phone was Fu Nanshan's heavy breathing. Chapter 12, I Owe You a Wish. Yu Ainen looked at Fu Nanshan calmly, her voice soft but firm. "Fu Nanshan, we have already obtained the divorce certificate. It is best not to see each other again in the future, and not to have any involvement. In this way, Miss Do can feel safe." It is good for me, you. And her? Fu Nanshan didn't respond, just hung up the phone. Yu Ainen put down her phone, feeling empty inside, hoping that Aunt Anne's matter would end here. She called Xie Zihui to ask about Aunt Anne's situation, but she didn't expect Xie Zihui to say in a heavy voice, "The situation is not good. Someone pushed Annen, and the police are investigating." Just when Yu Ainen was nervous, the phone rang again. "Yu Ainen?" A sneer came from the other end of the phone. "I am," she replied. "Tonight at 7 o'clock, Junyu Hotel 3020. Otherwise your adoptive mother surnamed, and we'll have to go to jail." It was Do Yuji's cousin Yi Changming, and his tone was threatening. "The evidence is conclusive, and the surveillance video is enough to prove Aunt Anne's innocence." Yu Ainen gritted her teeth and tried to remain calm. "Oh, you can try," Yi Changming said sarcastically. "Besides, I heard that she also adopted a little mute. If you don't want her to get into trouble, you'd better be obedient." Yu Ainen's heart tensed up instantly, and her thoughts were in a mess, but she calmed down. She would never let an Huanyan suffer from school violence. Thinking of this, she immediately got up, put on her clothes, and rushed to Junyu Hotel. After arriving at the hotel, the moment she opened the door, Fu Nanshan was sitting inside, seemingly surprised by her arrival. Yi Changming looked at her with a sinister smile and said frivolously, "Miss Yu is really punctual. Since you are here, you should have a few drinks. You must be sincere when you beg for mercy." Yu Ainen was not afraid at all. She looked at Fu Nanshan coldly and took off her scarf, revealing the clear purple marks on her neck. She picked up the wine glass on the table, calmly filled it with wine, and said calmly, "When we met at the age of 12, I brought pesticides with me. If I hadn't saved you, I would have drunk it." She continued to pour the wine, her voice calm. "From then on, you forcefully entered my life. I always thought that my life was not expected, but there was actually someone who cared about it." She stared at Fu Nanshan with cold eyes. "You don't have to threaten me. I owe you a wish. No matter what it is, I will agree to it." Fu Nanshan's throat moved slightly, obviously shocked by her words. Yu Ainen just smiled slightly and drank the wine in the glass. Chapter 13. Chills all over the body. When Fu Nanshan heard the name in Huanyan, he turned to look at Yi Changming. Only then did he realize that the reason Yu Ainen appeared here was because she was threatened. "Where's the medicine?" Yu Ainen said calmly. "Isn't the purpose of asking me to come here today to give you the medicine? I've already poured the wine." The room was completely silent. The people who were originally watching the fun were strangely silent. Yi Changming thought it was Fu Nanshan who told Yu Ainen, and nudged Fu Nanshan next to him with his leg. "Brother Nanshan, are you feeling bad?" Seeing that Fu Nanshan was just staring at Yu Ainen without saying anything, Yi Changming simply picked up the small bottle in front of Fu Nanshan, walked to Yu Ainen, poured the medicine powder into the cup, and stirred it with chopsticks for a while. "Ms. Yu, this is truth medicine. After you drink it, our brother Nanshan will ask you questions." Truth medicine? If Yu Ainen hadn't accidentally overheard the conversation between Fu Nanshan and Yi Changming in the hospital, if they hadn't tried every means to get her to come, she actually believed it. Yu Ainen picked up a full glass of white wine and asked Fu Nanshan, "After I drink it, don't embarrass Annen and in Huanyan anymore." Fu Nanshan responded, "Okay." Yu Ainen nodded. The spicy liquid continued to burn her esophagus and her heart as she swallowed. On Fu Nanshan's 26th birthday, Yu Ainen chose to give up Fu Nanshan. Today, Yu Ainen chose to kill the part of herself who deeply loved Fu Nanshan in her heart. Putting down the cup, she held onto the edge of the round table and said, "Ask." "Don't worry, Miss Yu. This medicine will take effect in 10 minutes after you drink it." Yi Changming pulled out a chair for Yu Ainen and poured her a glass of juice. "Drink some juice to suppress the smell of alcohol. After Brother Nanshan finishes his questioning, Mr. Xie should be here, so it's a good time to take Miss Yu back." The reason why Xie Zihui came here was probably to plan for her to go to bed with him. Her face was calm as she sat down in the quiet box. Soon, the medicine took effect. Yu Ainen's face flushed and her hands were clasped tightly. She glanced at the clock and saw that the time was up. She spoke in a hoarse voice, "It's time. Ask." Yu Ainen. Fu Nanshan, leaning back in his chair pretending to be calm, stared at her and said in a clear voice, "Did I do it with you that night? Do you want me to do it with you or not?" Yu Ainen asked back, "Answer me." Meeting Fu Nanshan's deep and cold gaze, she spoke firmly, "No. Can I leave now?" The heat spread violently throughout his body, and he was swept by a strong sense of emptiness. Yu Ainen felt weak all over and could hardly sit still. "Wait! Don't be impatient. Do Yuji's cousin picked up his phone and clicked on the video. I'm sorry, miss you. I didn't record it just now. This is for my sister to see. Please say it again. On the night when Fu Nanchun and I were drugged, nothing happened between us. Yu Ainin turned to Yi Changming's camera because Fu Nanchun hugged me and called Do Yuji's name. On the phone screen, one can clearly see that Yu Ainin's eyes, which were originally black and white, are now misty and blurry, and it is obvious that her mind is about to be controlled by the drugs. Yi Changming raised the corners of his lips and looked up at the thin figure standing at the door, his eyes revealing an undisguised determination to win. After saying that, she stood up holding the edge of the table. Sit down, wait for Xie Huai to come, and let him take you back. Fu Nanchun said irritably. Maybe it was because of the effect of the drug, but Yu Ainin's tears welled up all of a sudden, and she spoke slowly as if she was suppressing something. Fu Nanchun, I swear if I pester you even once more in this life, I will be trapped in Yujia village forever. I can't leave even if I die. She refused to beg for mercy, trying hard to suppress her trembling. She looked up at Fu Nanchun, who had an indifferent expression, and asked, So, can you let me leave by myself? She knew very well that the purpose of Fu Nanchun and Do Yuji's cousin forcing her to come here was to make her sleep with Xie Huai. But she still had a glimmer of hope for Fu Nanchun's humanity. Why are you being so stubborn? Fu Nanchun said in a cold voice. You live in a place that doesn't even have streetlights. Do you want something to happen by not letting anyone take you there? Yu Ainin's biggest nightmare in her life is Yujia village, and Fu Nanchun knows it even though he has lost his memory. It was because he knew that, and because Yu Ainin said such words after drinking the truth medicine, that he became even angrier. She was overcome by a feeling of dizziness and trance, as if countless ants were burrowing into her bones. Yu Ainin knew that she couldn't hold on for much longer. Her mind started to get confused, but she still remembered that she didn't want so many people to see her in such a state, so she almost subconsciously held onto the chair and walked towards the door. Fu Nanchun's eyes suddenly darkened. He kicked the chair away with his long legs, took 2 steps at a time, grabbed Yu Ainin's arm, and pulled her to his side. Yu Ainin! The moment he saw the tears on Yu Ainin's face, Fu Nanchun's heart felt as if it was being grabbed tightly by someone, and he suddenly became speechless. His throat rolled over, and he could see that Yu Ainin was uncomfortable, but he was unwilling to give up his attitude, so he said, You still owe me one wish. This is the last one. Let someone send you back. A certain emotion that Yu Ainin had originally suppressed under her calmness became increasingly stronger with the effect of the drug. Her eyes dimmed, and her nails dug into the tender flesh of her palms. The body temperature was obviously alarmingly high, but Yu Ainin felt cold all over. She looked at Fu Nanchun's handsome face that was so familiar that it couldn't be more familiar, and remembered the high spirits when he looked at her with bright eyes on his 18th birthday and said that he wanted to keep 2 wishes for her, and no matter when he said them, she must help him realize them. This wish was indeed related to her, but she didn't expect it to be used in this way. Does it have to be that she has to sleep with someone else? Yu Ainin closed her eyes, then opened them again. Apart from the red bloodshot eyes, she showed no emotion. She just smiled barely noticeably and said, If this is the only way to convince you that I won't pester you anymore, then do as you wish. From the moment she woke up until now, she has been disappointed again and again with Fu Nanchun. She didn't know whether Fu Nanchun became like this later or he was always like this. Maybe in the past, her filter for Fu Nanchun was too thick, and her love for Fu Nanchun made her unable to see Fu Nanchun correctly. She may never have understood Fu Nanchun. Yu Ainin shook off Fu Nanchun's hand that was holding her. A huge feeling of emptiness came over her, and her sore legs could not support her. She staggered back 2 steps and fell to the ground. The slight pain from pinching her palms could no longer relieve her emptiness and torment. The effect of the medicine was stronger than Yu Ainin had expected, as if it was draining her. Oh my! What happened to miss you? Do Yuji's cousin helped Yu Ainin up before Fu Nanchun, and said to Fu Nanchun, Brother Nanchun, since Miss Yu doesn't want Mr. Xie to send her off, then I'll take Miss Yu downstairs to get a taxi. Fu Nanchun frowned and nodded with an inexplicable hostility. Chapter 14, It's me, Lyn Jinrong. I know the way to the hotel. Yu Ainin tried to break free from Yi Changming's hand. Ms. Yu, please don't be polite. Yi Changming almost held Yu Ainin hostage as he left the private room and walked towards the elevator. As the drug took effect, Yu Ainin's head became more and more dizzy and her legs became weaker and weaker. She struggled hard, but couldn't break free of Yi Changming's strong arms around her. Let me go. In the elevator, Someone glanced in the direction of Yu Ainin and Yi Changming. Yi Changming hugged Yu Ainin tightly, pretending to be doting on her, and said to her, "I told you that you can't drink, but you insist on showing off. Stop it. I'll take you back to your room to rest." After that, Yi Changming smiled apologetically to the people around him, freed one hand to press the elevator button, and whispered in Yu Ainin's ear, "Brother Nanshan's last wish at the coming-of-age ceremony was to have someone send you back. Why? Do you want to regret it?" Yu Ainin's vision could no longer focus, but she clearly saw that Yi Changming pressed the up button of the elevator, not the down button. Xie Zihuai has not appeared yet. If Fu Nanshan and Yi Changming could drug her, there's no guarantee that they wouldn't drug Xie Zihuai. She guessed that Xie Zihuai, who was also drugged, might be in a room upstairs. Fu Nanshan's last wish was that she could do as he wished. But why must it be Xie Zihuai? Be good. Stop making trouble. You are drunk. Go back to your room and rest first, okay? Yi Changming helped the man into the elevator and pressed 57. Yu Ainin, who could barely stand, tightly grasped the room card in her pocket. She reserved a room just in case, and it happened to be on the 57th floor. "You still owe me one wish. This is the last one. Let someone send you back." Fu Nanshan's words echoed in her mind, and Yu Ainin's hand holding the room card felt like it was holding a cactus, and it hurt. The consciousness of resistance began to collapse from within. This was the last wish she owed Fu Nanshan. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but the thought of world weariness and self-abandonment reoccupied her mind more than a decade later. She seemed to see the tall and long-legged Lyn Jinrong walking past the closed elevator door. Lyn Jinrong. She suddenly perked up. She could die honorably in any way, but she could not let anyone take pictures of her and leave something behind, thus becoming a stain on the Lyn family. She tried her best to restrain herself. Her voice was weak and trembling. "You and Fu Nanshan forced me to come to Junyu Hotel and drugged me. You forced me to go to the 57th floor. Was it because Xie Zihuai was in a room? Did you install a camera in the room?" Yi Changming hugged her tightly in his arms, sniffed Yu Ainin's fragrant long hair like a pervert, his throat rolling, his eyes greedy. "Yu Ainin, Haicha No. 1 Middle School is famous for its genius girl. I have long wanted to taste you. Don't worry, I will make you want to die tonight." Yu Ainin pushed Yi Changming away. Her back hit the elevator wall, and she fell to the ground, unable to muster any strength. "Get out." The effect of the drug came over her again. Yu Ainin curled up, bit her lips tightly, and groaned. If it was Xie Zihuai, Yu Ainin would still be confident that she could protect herself or even escape before the ambulance arrived. As long as we can make nice with Xie Zihuai afterwards, this matter can be resolved. But if it was Yi Changming, this pervert, she has to find a way. It was also the 57th floor, and she needed to run quickly to 5716. In the rising elevator, Yi Mingchong pulled up Yu Ainin, who was almost as soft as mud, and hugged her tightly. He stroked her face and whispered in her ear, "Crime? How can it be a crime if I make you feel good? Don't worry, I will record how good you feel, so you can see for yourself how good you feel." He used his fingers to push aside the hair stuck to Yu Ainin's forehead by the fine sweat, and said in an obscene voice, "Let me see how low you were when you begged me to have sex with you." Yu Ainin gritted her teeth and said nothing. She fumbled to unlock the phone with her hand, dialed 110, and forced herself to recall the route. She took to room 5716 from the elevator on the 57th floor after checking in half an hour ago. Ding! As soon as the elevator arrived, she pushed Yi Changming away, rushed out of the elevator, and stumbled towards room 5716. Yi Changming chuckled, put his hands in his pockets, and walked out of the elevator slowly. He looked at Yu Ainin, who was in a panic and holding onto the wall to escape, with an extremely disgusting and sticky look, just like a cat looking at a mouse that is determined to catch it. "Yu Ainin, the faster you run now, the more slutty you will be when you beg me to have sex with you later. I'm not in a hurry. Just run." Yi Changming unbuttoned his shirt and followed behind Yu Ainin with a smile on his face, teasing his prey. Her legs seemed not to belong to her, and she gradually lost feeling in them, and her vision became increasingly blurry. 5713. She clenched the room card in her sweaty hands and supported herself against the wall with one hand. It was almost there. "What? You can't run anymore?" Yi Changming said with a smile, and kept clicking his tongue. "Tisk, do you want me to help you?" 5716. Yu Ainin held the door handle and quickly took out the room card that she was holding with sweat. Beep! Hearing the voice, Yi Changming's expression changed. Seeing that his prey was about to disappear from his sight, Yi Changming stepped forward quickly but was still a step too late. The door lock tongue had already been stuck in the lock slot, and his prey had locked him outside the door. Yuanin also fell in the room. Yuanin, open the door. Do you hear me? Yi Chaiming knocked on the door with a gloomy face. No response came, so he threatened again. Don't forget that little mute. If you just open the door, I will let her go. Otherwise, even if I kill her, my brother-in-law, Fu Nanshan, will protect me. If you don't believe me, just try it. Seeing no response, Yi Chaiming sneered again, lowered his eyes to look at his watch, and the malice in his voice was like a venomous snake. It seems that you don't care about the life or death of that little mute. But it doesn't matter. You can only hold on for 10 more minutes at most. After 10 minutes, you will be like a dog, begging me to fuck you. As soon as Yi Chaiming finished speaking, he was kicked away. Fuck you. Yi Chaiming, grimacing in pain, raised his head, his face pale, the curse stuck in his throat. Lynn? Mr. Lynn. Blocked behind by the burly bodyguards and assistants was the tall and slender Lyn Jinrong in a black coat. The gloomy-looking man stood in front of the door of room 5716, holding the phone to his ear with one hand, and knocked on the door with a stern face. Yuanin, open the door. It's me, Lyn Jinrong. Yi Chaiming got up and tried to escape, but the bodyguard stepped forward with a stern face and blocked his way. In the room, Yuanin curled up on the gray carpet, her whole body tense, her mind controlled by the effects of the drug, leaving only her desire for the man, and her mind even began to become unclear. Yuanin, who was dazed by the drugs, heard someone knocking on the door and calling her. She took out her phone tremblingly and looked at the call display with blurry eyes. She asked for help. I'm in room 5716 of Junyu Hotel. Someone has drugged me. Please call an ambulance for me. Chapter 15, Don't You Regret? The drug took effect, and the phone slipped away. Yuanin pinched her legs in pain, forcing herself to regain consciousness. But the pain could not resist the raging desire. The torture made her sob and grit her teeth. You still owe me one wish. This is the last one. Let someone send you back. Fu Nanshan's words kept echoing in his fuzzy mind. She was covered in sweat and hugged herself tightly. She didn't know if it was because her body was in so much pain or because her heart was in so much pain, but her tears were like beads that had broken off the string. Hot. Magma was boiling inside her. Cold water. Yes, cold water. Before she went to meet Fu Nanshan, she asked the hotel for a few buckets of ice and filled the bathtub with cold water. Just like last time, it will pass as long as we get through it. She forced herself to stand up with the help of the wall and stumbled into the bathtub filled with ice cubes. Outside the door, Lyn Jinrong heard the sound of water on the other end of the phone. She almost squeezed the phone out of shape, hung up the phone, and said to the assistant, "Ask the hotel manager to open the door, and you drive the car to the hotel entrance." The assistant nodded and walked aside to make a phone call. Soon, the manager came with his people and swiped the card to open the door. Lyn Jinrong then turned around to look at Yi Chaiming, who had an unpleasant look on his face. His eyes behind the gold-rimmed glasses were icy and terrifying. Hand him over to the police. Boss Lyn, I am Master Fu's brother-in-law. This has nothing to do with me today. I am just following orders. Master Fu of 3020 Yanhai Pavilion is right there. We are together. If you don't believe me, you can send the person to Master Fu and tell him that I want an explanation for this matter. Lyn Jinrong finished impatiently, stepped into the door, and went straight into the bathroom. Yuanin, wearing a down jacket, soaked in ice water, her wet head resting on the edge of the bathtub. The marble floor was covered with water and ice cubes that splashed when she fell into the bathtub. Maybe it was the effect of the medicine, or because it was too cold, but her white joints clenched tightly around the edge of the bathtub, and she shivered continuously. Lyn Jinrong took off his woolen coat and suit with swift movements and pulled the man out of the bone-chilling water. The bitingly cold water soaked Yuanin's down jacket. Lyn Jinrong stripped Yuanin of her heavy down jacket and carried her out of the bathroom. Yuanin was soaked in cold water until it had no temperature at all, and she was barely able to suppress her crazy impulse. At this time, the heat source held her in his arms, wrapped in the fresh masculine scent and the scorching heat from the wet shirt, making Yuanin, whose body was already like hot oil, feel like seeing a raging fire, and her lingering rationality collapsed completely. When her body, without a trace of heat, left the heat source and touched the soft bed, she opened her eyes with difficulty, her vision unfocused. From her angle, she could see the man's stern jaw, his sliding Adam's apple, and his wet shirt sticking to his body, which gave Yuanin an extremely strong shock. At the moment when the man pulled the duvet to wrap her up, Yuanin, with her consciousness confused and blurred, grabbed the man's tie and kissed him almost instinctively. Lyn Jinrong's hands that were supporting the bed suddenly tightened, his muscles tensed, and his whole body froze. Yuanin's kiss was completely devoid of skill. Her mind was completely deprived by the drugs, leaving only instinct. He grabbed Yuanin's thin wrist that was pulling at his tie, and before he could pull her away, her frozen white fingers had already hooked around his neck and kissed Lyn Jinrong more deeply, awkwardly and roughly trying to pry open his teeth. There was a fire burning inside me, yet I was shivering from the cold. Yuanin was tortured by the two extremes of ice and fire, and felt like she was living a life worse than death. She clung to the man's hot body, as if she was holding on to a life-saving straw. Her consciousness was clearly in a state of confusion, and every nerve in her body was controlled by the drugs, leaving only the desire for the man, but tears still kept flowing out. Lyn Jinrong grabbed Yuanin's face and pushed her back onto the bed. Unexpectedly, the woman turned her head and kissed his fingers, and her cold hands wrapped around his arms. The veins on the back of Lyn Jinrong's hand bulged, and the electric current paralyzed his right hand along the tip of his thumb, and then flowed to his whole body. His eyes darkened as he pulled out his arm and pushed the man back onto the bed. Yuanin! She opened her eyes, her gaze unfocused. Outside the French window, the shining neon lights intersected with his three-dimensional profile. His tall nose and thin lips were within reach. Until she recognized him, she spoke with a strong nasal tone. Mr. Lyn, I feel so uncomfortable. Don't be afraid. I'll take you to the hospital. Lyn Jinrong took the tie from Yuanin, tied up her fiery hands, and wrapped her in a duvet. Being held in the man's hot big hand, his breath, his voice, all make desire and emptiness surge. Yuanin bit her lower lip and hummed unbearably, curling up her body, her breathing becoming a mess. She reached out and grabbed Lyn Jinrong's hand that was wrapping her in the quilt and said with difficulty, "Help me, please." Lyn Jinrong paused, his dark pupils as dark as the abyss. Yuanin, I'm not Fu Nanshan. I can't help you. Fu Nanshan's name was like a needle piercing the softest part of her heart. The worms that were churning in her bones and blood seemed to have lost their control and were biting her crazily. Just as Yi Changming said, the medicinal properties become stronger and stronger as time goes by. She couldn't hold on any longer and had completely lost her mind. I want the man in front of me. Yuanin buried half of her face in the duvet, and the other half was blocked by her wet long hair. Her voice was hoarse and painful, and she called his name desperately. Lyn Jinrong, please. Help me. The sound of Yuanin calling his name brushed past his heart like a feather, but it ignited a long-dormant volcano, causing the boiling and hot magma that he had deliberately sealed deep in his heart to erupt. His eyes darkened, and his breathing became heavier. The boiling blood was beating in my heart. Lyn Jinrong tightened her grip on Yuanin's thin wrists, veins bulging on the back of her hands. With her other hand, she pushed aside the wet hair stuck to her cheek. Her Adam's apple rolled, and there was a dark flame burning in her eyes. Yuanin, don't you regret it? Lyn Jinrong, please help me. The woman was unconscious, and her lustful, crying voice was like a poison that tempted people to fall. Let him be willing to sink from now on. Yuanin only felt that she was pressed into the soft bed by the burning heat and sank deeply into it. His bony, slender fingers pinched Yuanin's chin and pried open her lips and teeth in an unyielding manner. He went straight in and violently attacked her more eagerly than Yuanin. Lips and teeth intertwined, saliva mixed. Surrounded by the refreshing masculine scent of Lyn Jinrong, the effect of the drug became even stronger. The slightest touch would make Yuanin tremble uncontrollably, not to mention such an unbridled kiss. Yuanin was almost deprived of oxygen, and her brain went blank. The powerful lines of the man's waist and abdomen pressed against her, and the hot, unfamiliar body temperature wrapped around her cold body, as if it could burn her. Barely conscious, she had no idea when her clothes were removed. She only remembered the vibrating cell phone that had fallen to the ground. I remember the time when Lyn Jinrong looked at her deeply. His eyes made her feel confused and infatuated. During the passionate kiss, the sudden pain made her clutch the bed sheet tightly. She cried out Lyn Jinrong's name, and her lips and tongue were hooked by the hot softness. I don't know whether it was because of the pain or the maddening comfort that the fingers that were curled up were pried open, and strong fingers with clear veins were inserted forcibly interlocking the fingers. For the entire night, she was in a state of confusion and passion stimulated by drugs, tossing and turning like a boat on the sea. Chapter 16, I'm Not That Despicable. Anan was awakened by the sound of water splashing in the bathroom. The hotel's floor-to-ceiling windows are covered with blackout curtains, making it difficult to tell whether it is day or night. She had a splitting headache like she had a hangover, and she pressed her temples out of habit, but her arms were so sore that she couldn't even lift them. Not only her arms, but her whole body was in pain, especially her most private parts. Lyn Jinrong. Thunder exploded in my head. She sat up suddenly, and all the blood in her body froze into ice. She pressed the quilt tightly against her chest, looking at the wet duvet on the ground, and the scattered shirts, trousers, sweaters, and jeans. The scenes of last night flashed through her mind like a movie. What did she do? Anan looked pale. Lyn Jinrong is the adopted son of the Lyn family, and nominally, her biological mother's younger brother. She clearly didn't want to have anything to do with the Lyn family anymore, but under the influence of drugs, she went to bed with the adopted son of the Lyn family. She was a little lucid last night, otherwise she wouldn't have been able to accurately call out Lyn Jinrong's name. The drugs tortured her to the point where she was living a life worse than death, and her consciousness was blurred. She kissed Lyn Jinrong almost uncontrollably and held him to beg him. Anan covered her face with her hands, and her palms touched her swollen and numb lips. The pain made her come back to her senses with a start, and she got out of bed tremblingly to pick up her wet clothes. Realizing that she couldn't wear such cold clothes in the dead of winter, she just took out a bathrobe from the hotel closet and wrapped herself in it. And then she saw several shopping bags on the sofa, 3 of which were for women. Next to the sofa was a box of women's shoes in her size. Lyn Jinrong must have asked his assistant to buy it. Disposable underwear, socks, as well as new thermal suits, jeans, sweaters, and down jackets. She glanced towards the bathroom, where the sound of water was constantly coming from, and shivering while changing her clothes despite the discomfort. At this time, if they slip away and don't meet each other, at least there will be no awkwardness between them for a while. But their relationship is too special to be unclear. Anan put on her shoes and suppressed the idea of running away. Lyn Jinrong, who was sitting restlessly waiting for the bathroom to take a shower, was still worried. Soon, the sound of water in the bathroom stopped. Anan, sitting on the sofa, straightened her back nervously, tightly grasping her dead cell phone, her heart beating like a drum. Last night, although my mind was deprived by drugs, but she still clearly remembered Lyn Jinrong's mellow voice in the dark, coaxing her not to be too anxious for the first time. I clearly remember Lyn Jinrong's breath. She remembered the shudder she felt when Lyn Jinrong's thin lips touched hers. On the sofa, Anan's ears were getting redder and redder, and her whole body felt like it was on fire. She looked towards the bathroom door anxiously. When the hair dryer stopped, her heart was already beating in her throat. The bathroom door opened, and Lyn Jinrong, who was wearing trousers and buttoning his shirt, came out. He didn't see the woman on the bed, but turned his head and saw Anan, who had already changed her clothes, on the sofa. He paused buttoning his shirt, his eyes falling on Anan's pale face. "Why don't you sleep a little longer?" Lyn Jinrong behaved calmly, but Anan's heart was beating faster and faster. What happened last night was more than just crossing the line. Although there is no blood relationship between the two, Lyn Jinrong is the adopted son of her biological mother's family. "Thank you for what happened last night." Anan found her voice after a while. I'm sorry, it's all my fault." She lowered her head and said, "You are the adopted son of the Lyn family, and others think I am a poor relative from your biological father's side. We are related by blood, and you have only taken care of me for so many years, so what happened last night must not be known to a third person. If the matter were to be known, Lyn Jinrong, and she would be charged with incest. How will Lyn Jinrong live in the future, and how will he gain a foothold in the business world?" Anan has always known that Lyn Jinrong wanted to leave the Lyn family, and let the Lyn family take her back. Then, Lyn Jinrong might use what happened last night to make public that she is actually the biological daughter of the only daughter of the Lyn family in Kyoto. That was another disaster for her biological mother, Lyn Jinhwa. She could never let this happen. She was the one who was drugged, and she was the one who begged Lyn Jinrong to go to bed with her. Naturally, she is the one who should clean up the mess. Okay. Lyn Jinrong's eyes were deep. She turned around calmly, bent down, picked up the watch on the bedside table, and put it on. Her tone was calm and mellow. Are you feeling unwell? I'll ask Assistant Sue to take you to the hospital for a checkup. Yuanin looked up at Lyn Jinrong, unable to hide her surprise. She thought that Lyn Jinrong would take this opportunity to analyze the pros and cons for her and take her back to the Lyn family. She had even prepared some cold and hard words, but in the end, Lyn Jinrong only cared about whether she felt unwell. Noticing Yuanin's gaze, Lyn Jinrong, who was slowly tying his tie, raised his eyes. There was an indescribable depth in his eyes, but it was so calm that no emotion could be detected. I know what you were thinking. I'm not that despicable. Being seen through by Lyn Jinrong, Yuanin felt very uncomfortable. No, I don't doubt your character. It's just... The phone vibrated. Lyn Jinrong glanced at it but didn't answer it and picked up the suit and put it on. I will handle the hotel surveillance, and this matter will not be leaked. You don't have to worry about the Yu family appearing on the show. The Lyn family prepared a very good identity for your mother. They can only find out that your mother did die of heavy bleeding in the hospital, but you will inevitably be involved. Lyn Jinrong adjusted her cuffs. Really not considering going abroad? There are many universities abroad for you to choose from. With Yuanin's grades, as long as Lyn Jinrong donates money, it won't be a problem for her to get into any school. I know you want to help me, but everyone has their own path. Without forcing herself, Lyn Jinrong received calls one after another. After answering the phone, he said to Yuanin, I have something to do and have to rush back to Kyoto. Anan is fine now. I think you still have things to deal with, and you need to stay in Haicheng for a few more days. Before you leave Haicheng, you can stay in the villa area temporarily, which is safer. After Lyn Jinrong left, Yuanin's tense spirit relaxed, and she realized that her whole body was aching. She stayed in the room alone for half an hour before going downstairs to check out. As soon as she walked to the hotel entrance, she saw Lyn Jinrong's assistant standing by the car and greeted her with a smile. Ms. Anan, Yuanin was stunned. Assistant Sue, why are you here? Didn't Mr. Lin say he had to rush back to Kyoto for something? Mr. was called back to Kyoto by the old man because he failed to go on a blind date with Miss Sue, as promised yesterday. Assistant Sue opened the car door and made a gesture of invitation to Yuanin. Mr. asked me to stay and take you to the hospital for a physical examination. Yuanin's palms tightened. It turned out that Lyn Jinrong was going on a blind date yesterday. Don't bother. I'm fine and don't need to go to the hospital. Yuanin now just wanted to charge her mobile phone as soon as possible and contact Anan. The sir said, if you don't want to go to the hospital, let me take you back to rest. Assistant Sue was still smiling. There is soy milk and dumplings that I just bought in the car. You can eat them first. Chapter 17, I can't remember anything. Yuanin thanked him and got in the car. I borrowed a mobile phone charging cable from Assistant Sue and finally charged my phone. As soon as I turned on the phone, I saw more than 60 missed calls on the screen. Except for the 2 missed calls from Anton, the rest were from the same number. It's Fu Nanshan. She held the phone tightly, not knowing why Fu Nanshan made so many calls. Did he find out that she didn't sleep with another man in the room he arranged for her? Or did you find out that she was not with Xie Huai? In short, it can't be because of worry. Yuanin curled her lips in self-mockery and dialed Aunt Anne's number. Auntie Anne couldn't hide her happiness when she received Yuanin's call, but she still lowered her voice and said, Anan, the police said they have investigated the matter clearly, and Miss Doe also said that I don't need to pay double compensation. I'm out, and I'm now in the hotel arranged by the program team. Which hotel is it? I'll be there right away. Vayu Anand said. No, please don't come. The Yu family is here too. Anna was worried that the Yu family would pester Yuanin and said anxiously, Don't worry, I'm fine now. I'll go back after the show is recorded. It's just, I don't know if I can give these photos I brought to Nanshan's child. Yuanin's palm tightened, and she felt a sharp pain. Then she realized that her palm had been crushed last night. She said softly, Annie, throw away that photo. Fu Nanshan and I have already received the divorce certificate, and we have nothing to do with each other in the future. Annan was stunned. After a while, Aunt Anne's low, crying voice came from the other end of the phone. I should have discovered it earlier. You never came back with Nanshan after you woke up. Every time you said Nanshan was busy. Auntie, and it's all over. Yuanin interrupted Auntie Anne softly. I just feel that you've suffered too much. Annan sighed. You love Nanshan so much that you're willing to sacrifice your life for him. Nanshan obviously loves you so much too. You shouldn't have ended up like this. Everyone can see Yuanin's love and care for Fu Nanshan. The phone prompts that there is another incoming call from the second line. Yuanin hung up the phone with Annan. using the excuse that another call came in. The call was answered by the production team of Searching for Family. "Hello, Ms. Yu. Can you come to the rehearsal this afternoon? The show will be recorded tomorrow, and we need to go through the rehearsal," said someone from the program crew. "I won't go to the rehearsal. I have other things to do." "Understood. I'll talk to you over the phone later. Just call me Xiaoyo." Assistant Sue, who was driving in the front seat, saw Yu Ainen put down her phone through the rearview mirror and said, "Ms. Ainen, if you don't want to participate in the program looking for relatives, you can ask your husband to help make a phone call. And you don't have to worry too much. Your husband talked to Professor Lynn on the phone, and Professor Lynn was not affected. The program looking for relatives still has a bottom line. The Yu family will definitely be bitten back if they are greedy." Assistant Sue spoke with certainty. When mentioning Lyn Jinrong, Yu Ainen couldn't help but think of what happened last night. She smiled awkwardly at Assistant Sue and said, "It's okay. I know what's going on. I have other reasons for participating in the show." The phone screen lit up again. It's Fu Nanchun. The divorce certificate has been obtained, and the matter between Anton and Do Yuji is over. Fu Nanchun called her. Could it be that he wanted to confirm whether she had fulfilled his last wish? She lowered her eyes and watched the phone screen go off before blocking the person. Assistant Sue sent Yu Ainen to the door of the villa, and then told Yu Ainen that Yi Changming had been arrested and someone had reported Yi Changming for rape. "Yi Changming deserves it. I won't have the chance to harass you again in the future." Assistant Sue pushed open the gate of the villa for Yu Ainen. "Thank you." She thanked him, knowing that this was Lyn Jinrong's way of not involving her and warning Yi Changming. No wonder Fu Nanchun called her. "I'm afraid he is here to hold me accountable." Outside the narrow alley of the messy shanty town, there was a dark black sports car parked that looked out of place in this place. Fu Nanchun, who was sitting in the car, frowned. Hearing the busy tone from the other end of the phone, he realized that he had been blocked by Yu Ainen. He threw his phone aside in annoyance and lit a cigarette. On the passenger seat was the scarf that Yu Ainen had left in the box last night. It was only after Yi Changming was sent to the box by Lyn Jinrong's bodyguard that he realized that the medicine Yi Changming gave him was not the truth medicine at all. Yi Changming lied to him because he was afraid that he would be soft-hearted. He forced Yu Ainen to drink the medicine and insisted that Yu Ainen wait for Xie Zihuai to come and take it. Yu Ainen swore that she would rather leave than be trapped in Yujia village forever, obviously misunderstanding that his purpose was to make her and Xie Zihuai sleep together. Thinking of Yu Ainen's words as you wish, Fu Nanchun felt very annoyed. Fortunately, Lyn Jinrong went. If it were someone else, Fu Nanchun would still worry about Yu Ainen's safety, but Lyn Jinrong, he should have sent Yu Ainen to the hospital quickly. He lowered the car window, looked at the people coming and going in the urban village, and took a deep breath of a cigarette. All I could think about was Yu Ainen's expression from last night, and I felt extremely annoyed. Fu Nanchun had a bad impression of Yu Ainen. In his mind, Yu Ainen was the third party between him and Do Yuji, a sticky piece of candy that couldn't be gotten rid of. But when he heard her say that she was going to commit suicide after saving him by accident, Fu Nanchun felt a pang of pain for some reason. He could not connect the man who wanted to commit suicide with the bright girl who pressed him against the rose-covered wall and kissed him at sunset. This is the first time that Fu Nanchun wants to know about his past with Yu Ainen since he lost his memory. But he couldn't remember anything except that scene. Searching for Relatives is a recorded broadcast, and the program will officially start recording tomorrow. In the evening, the production crew called and told Yu Ainen the general process and the time she was scheduled to appear on stage, so that Yu Ainen would have a clear idea of what was going on. Perhaps they learned from the program crew that Yu Ainen would also be participating in the program, so Yu's family got Yu Ainen's phone number from the program crew. As if she had a premonition, Yu Ainen clicked on the call, recording the moment she answered the phone. "Yu Ainen, you shameless bitch. Aren't you very good at hiding? How do you know we're afraid of being on the show?" Yu Baodong's gloating and complacent voice came from the other end of the phone. "You're shameless. I think highly of you by letting you return to Yujia village to be Sun Keizi's wife. There are so many guys in college, and with a slut like you, you must have been no longer a virgin. I don't know how many people have slept with you. And you..." Before Yu Baodong could finish, the phone was snatched away by Yu Baodong's grandmother, her voice as harsh and sharp as ever. "Yu Zhaodi, you black-hearted, money-losing slut. Why don't you just die? Your family feeds you and clothes you, but you caused your dad to go to jail. You are just like your dirty, slutty mom. Our Yu family spent money to buy her back to carry on the family line, and we fed her and treated her so well. Not only did she give birth to a money-losing slut like you, she also ran away. When she dies, she wants to take my eldest grandson with her. Why don't you die with her?" Chapter 18, Your Brother's House and Money. Yuanin intentionally recorded the video, restrained her emotions, and spoke calmly. How shameless do you have to be to say such a thing? My biological mother originally had a happy family, but you kidnapped her to Yujia village, didn't give her clothes, and were afraid that she would run away. So you only gave her one meal of pig food a day. You locked her in the cellar with an iron chain and beat and scolded her, breaking her legs. Do you think you were good to my biological mother? She was kidnapped to your house at the age of 16 and started giving birth to children nonstop at the age of 17. All the girls fell to death. She gave birth to 8 children in 11 years and died on the operating table with the 9th child. Do you think you are good to my biological mother? This is good for you. Do you want it? Old Mrs. Yu was so furious with Yuanin that she reflexively tried to defeat Yuanin with the most vicious and vulgar words. You are a filthy, rotten-hearted bastard. A girl goes to a place with so many men. Men and women squeeze into one room, saying it's a class, but behind closed doors they are all thieves and prostitutes, doing vile things. You are all sluts who deserve to be fucked. Yuanin raised her eyebrows slightly, pretending to be angry, and raised her voice. Haiching University is the top university, a holy place that has cultivated countless talents for the country. Don't use your dirty thoughts to speculate about the students of Haiching University. Hearing Yuanin's anxious defense, old lady Yu thought she had found Yuanin's weakness, and she spared no effort to insult and attack her with the most unpleasant and dirty words. Bah, you still call it a prestigious school. The girls in your school have fooled around with so many men that they have been turned into sluts by men. I don't even know if they can give birth to babies in the future, and you still call it a prestigious school. Mom, give me the phone. Yu Baodong's aunt snatched the phone from the old lady who was spewing shit into it and started to play the good cop as usual. Zhao Di, don't blame your grandma for being angry. After all, we are a family, and even if our bones are broken, our tendons are still connected. You're a girl, and you're already 25 years old and still not married. Why are you spending money to go to university your dad asked you to get your tuition back for your own good? Those universities are all scams. Girls should get married younger. Only then can they give a high gift, and that money can be used to help your brother get married. This is such a good thing, and it can be considered that you have made a contribution to the family. After all, your brother is the backbone of our Yu family. Yuanin interrupted Aunt Yu Baodong's words. From childhood to adulthood, has the Yu family ever paid a penny for my tuition? How can you have the nerve to let me pay my tuition to the Yu family? I never went to school before I was 10 years old. I have been beaten and worked hard since I can remember. When I was 10 years old, I took my mother Ann into escape, and you wanted to beat me to death. It was Aunt and who found a way to lend you 20,000 yuan, and you let me go. Did you see me once when I had a car accident 4 years ago? All right. Once I was in a coma for more than a year. I don't know how you knew I became a vegetable. You went to the hospital to see if I was dead or not. You conspired to pull out my oxygen tube in front of my bed. How to blackmail the hospital for compensation after I died. Now you tell me that we are a family? Hey, you kid. Yu Baodong's aunt sighed. Why don't you tell me that our family spent 30,000 yuan to buy your mother? You let your mother run away and caused your father to go to jail. That wants you. So 20,000 yuan in compensation is not too much. And if you hadn't been given to someone else, would you be able to live the good life you have now? Your father gave birth to you, and you were going to die. The money we asked the hospital for is considered the pension you gave to your father, right? Besides, you look fine now. Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Yu Baodong's aunt changed the subject. Zhao Di, you and your brother are both your grandfather's bloodline. Your grandfather can afford to send you to school, even though you're a girl. Now that Baodong is of marriageable age, shouldn't your grandfather help Baodong? Aunt Yu Baodong didn't wait for Yuanin to speak and said earnestly, Zhao Di, please persuade your grandpa. You said we are a family, and your family really doesn't want to go to the point of being on the show to ruin your grandpa and your reputation. Your grandpa seems to be a university professor, right? If the matter gets out of hand, won't the reputation of a professor who teaches and educates people be ruined? Yuanin's face was gloomy. What do you want? I heard that university professors will be given houses. You asked your grandfather to transfer the house to your brother. If not, buy your brother a villa in Haicheng, and buy Baodong a car worth 500,000 yuan. We don't want the car, but the girl's request. The girl also wants a gift of 660,000 yuan. You said that your grandfather only has one daughter, your mother. Your mother is gone now, and your grandfather only has Baodong's blood. Doesn't your grandfather's blood belong to Baodong? He has so much money in his hands and doesn't help Baodong. He avoids Baodong. If your mother knew about it, she would die with regret. You tortured my biological mother and killed her. If Mr. Lin had helped you, she would have died with regrets. Yu Anan said calmly. Give me the phone. Yu Anan's biological father, Yu Jiwang, couldn't hold back his anger, snatched the phone, and started to curse. You Zhaodi, did I give you face? Don't think I don't know that you coaxed that old bastard surnamed Lynn not to see your brother, just to occupy your brother's house and money. I tell you, that old bastard's house and money belong to your brother. If you, a shameless money loser, dare to covet them, I'll beat you to death. Don't talk nonsense. When this damn girl was 12 years old, I took a deposit of 5,000 yuan from Wang Yua's family. In the end, your sister was so incompetent that she didn't bring Zhaodi back. I had to pay them 600 yuan to settle the matter. Old Mrs. Yu interrupted Yu Jiawang anxiously. This time, my family took 30,000 yuan from Sun Casey and agreed to bring Zhaodi back to give birth to his baby. You beat her to death, and we have to pay Sun Casey compensation. Sun Casey is not someone you can easily mess with. This money loser's life was given by me. If I want her to die, she can't live. This is the law of nature. After Yu Jiawang yelled at old lady Yu, he ordered Yu Anan on the other end of the phone. Hurry up and call the old man surnamed Lin. If the old man surnamed Lin doesn't give your brother's house, doesn't give your brother a betrothal gift, and doesn't buy your brother a car, I will beat you to death. You shameless little bastard who coveted your brother's property. Yu Jiawang's voice was sinister and vicious, just like the way Yu Anan remembered him beating her and her mother in the cellar every time. It was completely different from his usual image as a good guy to outsiders. It seems that you haven't had enough of the 7 years in prison. Beat me to death. You will be sentenced to death. You accepted 30,000 yuan from Sun Casey to sell me, which involves human trafficking. If you succeed, you will be the seller and your sentence will be heavier. Yu Anan had already obtained the recording she wanted, so she stopped arguing with the Yu family and hung up the phone. Chapter 19, Innocence. The Yu family members did not give up and called again. She decisively blocked him and began to sort out the various evidences that she had left behind to protect against the Yu family. The Yu family members were cursing at each other in the hotel and gathered together to try to explain themselves to each other. Bastard, just like her heartless mother. Shameless dog. She just wants our Baodong's property. Old Mrs. Yu was so angry that her teeth were itching. Baodong, you must perform well on the show tomorrow. You must contact your grandfather no matter what. Don't let that bitch Yu Zhaodi get away with it. You've become so powerful that you dare to threaten me with going to jail. But I'm her biological father, and I gave her life. I don't think I can break any law if I beat her to death. Yu Jiawang looked unhappy and cursed in anger. Huame is what the Yu family calls Yu Anan's biological mother, Lyn Jinrong. The women who were abducted to Yujia village were used to give birth to children, and no one cared what the abducted women were called. Yu Jiawang accidentally learned that Yu Anan's biological mother's name contained the word Hua, and thought it meant Hua, so he kept calling her Huame, Huame. When Zhaodi was 12 years old, I was too helpless to bring her back home. Now that Zhaodi has grown up, how could she obediently go back to Yu village with us? Brother, you have accepted Sun Casey's money. If Zhaodi doesn't go back, it will be difficult to explain to Sun Casey. She dares. Yu Jiawang was shaking with anger. Her nude photos are posted everywhere. We will talk about this on the show tomorrow. By then, everyone will know that she stripped naked and sold herself in college. Everyone in Haicheng will be able to drown her with a spit. She will have no choice but to follow us back to Yujia village and marry Sun Casey. At 12:30 noon the next day, Yu Anan went to Haicheng TV station with assorted materials. After receiving a call from Lyn Jinrong, Tang Yan met with Yu Anan before the program started recording. At 2 o'clock sharp, the program began recording. The studio was packed with audiences. The show itself has high ratings. And with the previous incident between Do Yuji and the show guest Anian at the airport, the show has attracted even more attention. As usual, after the host Tang Yan made a brief opening statement, he asked the Yu family to tell the story. Yu Jiawang was not at all as aggressive as he was yesterday when he was talking to Yu Anan on the phone. He sat on the sofa with his head down, hunched over with his skinny body, and acted pitiful without saying a word. Yu Baodong slowly began to talk about how much he missed his biological mother, how pitiful he was as a child, how he was bullied by others, and how he was a child without a mother. Many older audience members shed tears while listening to him. After listening to Yu Baodong's words, the old lady of the Yu family began to wipe away her tears, telling how hard her life was and swearing that she was definitely not an evil mother-in-law. Ever since Baodong's mother came to our house, She has been treated like a precious treasure. We never let her work. When she is not able to do anything, it is always me, an old woman, who serves and feeds her. But because our family is too poor, Baodong's mother abandoned her children and ran away. Yu Baodong's aunt hurriedly tried to calm the old lady down, her eyes red. Yu Anan followed Tang Yan's arrangement and sat in the dressing room backstage, watching the family's performance quietly through the screen, with no ripples in her heart. It's so infuriating. How could there be such a cruel woman who took the child away just because the family was poor? The threshold for being a parent in this world is still too low. If you only care about giving birth but not raising your children, the children will be so pitiful. Many people in the audience sympathized with this honest family and expressed their indignation. Tang Yan looked at Yu Baodong and asked gently, "Your mother left you when you were only 5 years old. Don't you hate your mother?" "I don't hate my mother because my grandma and dad told me that my mother didn't marry my dad voluntarily. My dad borrowed 30,000 yuan to get my mother. Although grandma and dad treated my mother very well, my mother had no feelings for my father and didn't want to stay in that poor place. I understand very well, but since I was a child, everyone else has a mother, but I don't. I really miss my mother, and I want to see her." Yu Baodong choked up. "I want to ask my mother why she doesn't want me." Sure enough, as soon as Yu Baodong finished speaking, whispers were heard from the audience stands. "What bought it? Is it human trafficking or an arranged marriage by my grandfather's family? No way. Arranged marriage? Even if it was an arranged marriage, the child is innocent." Auntie In, who had been waiting to go on stage at the other side of the stage, was so angry when she heard the audience's comments that her eyes turned red. She couldn't help but rush out and loudly questioned, "Why don't you dare tell everyone that Hua Mei was trafficked to your home?" The staff quickly asked Anton to go back. As soon as these words were spoken, the audience was in an uproar. "What the hell? This guy was kidnapped. Oh, I know, women who are trafficked usually end up in a miserable situation. No wonder he ran. Oh my God, who wouldn't run?" The children who were forced to give birth to abducted women come back to find their mothers. This is the hot topic that Tang Yan wants most in this episode. Seeing this, Yu Baodong quickly said, "My father was sentenced to prison for this matter. After so many years in prison, he realized his mistakes. He came here today just to see my mother and say sorry to her because he was ignorant and didn't understand the law at the time. He feels very guilty. I admit my fault, and I have been in jail to atone for my sins. But the child is innocent." Yu Jiawang said timidly, "I will accept the death penalty. It is my fault. But our Baodong is not wrong. Baodong just wants to see his mother and grandfather. I only asked Baodong's mother and grandfather to meet Baodong. Let me kowtow to apologize, and I am willing to die." Yu Jiawang knelt down and said, "Host, please help Baodong." Tang Yan quickly helped Yu Jiawang sit down and said to the audience, "After many visits and investigations by our program team, we found Doctor who performed the surgery on Yu Baodong's mother. Doctor who has retired and lives abroad with his children. However, we got Doctor whose phone number and interviewed him over the phone. In the studio, a recording of the phone call between the program crew and Doctor who was played. On the phone, Doctor who said that she had a deep impression of the traffic lady. Due to long-term abuse, the lady had a lot of new and old injuries on her body, which were shocking. One of her legs was broken, and her mental state was very poor. Later, she died on the operating table due to heavy bleeding. The patient's mother even knelt down and begged her to save her daughter, no matter how much money it cost. The couple had been looking for their daughter for almost 12 years. The patient's mother suffered from severe depression because of her daughter's disappearance and even attempted suicide twice. Chapter 20, do you want it? Doctor who spoke slowly, and even now there is a sigh in his voice. The patient's father also knelt down and begged me, saying if his daughter couldn't survive, he was afraid that the patient's mother wouldn't survive either, and begged me to save their daughter no matter what. Who knew that the patient still didn't survive after the operation. I later heard that the patient's mother also passed away shortly after her daughter. It was really pitiful. The call recording stops playing here. Tang Yan looked at Yu Baodong and said, "After our investigation, unfortunately, your mother has indeed passed away, just as your mother's good friend Mizan said. Today we have invited a friend of Yu Baodong's mother Hua Mei to the program group, and we would like Mizan to tell us about Hua Mei's story." The staff invited the emotional aunt into the center of the stage, sat her down, and told the story of how she and Yu Ainan's biological mother escaped from Yujia village with Yu Ainan's help. How come he was so panicked that he fell in front of the police station and died of heavy bleeding when he was sent to the hospital? The audience below the stage sighed. I told them that Huame was gone, but they didn't believe me. Anan looked anxious. She was about to tell them about how the Yu family threatened her with Yuanan, but she was afraid of implicating Yuanan, so she shut her mouth abruptly. So Fin, it's not that we don't believe you. You were the only one who had a good relationship with Baodong's mother in Yujia village. Later, you left together. It's impossible that you don't have Baodong's mother's contact information. The child just wants to see his biological mother, sister, and grandfather. You obviously have Baodong's sister's phone number and his grandfather's phone number. So why are you so cruel and unwilling to give them to us? Otherwise, we can't expose our family's dirty laundry on the show. As old Mrs. Yu spoke, she hugged Yu Baodong and started crying, going on and on about how difficult her life was and how Yu Baodong was bullied as a child and was accused of being a motherless child. After Baodong's sister and mother left, we haven't had any contact for so many years. Look at what they have done to a good girl. She is so naughty at such a young age. She drugged people and had sex with them. Her nude photos were posted everywhere. Old Mrs. Yu became more and more excited as she spoke. I shouldn't have let Zhaodi go. If she had listened to me earlier, she would have married and had a baby earlier. She wouldn't be short of men. How could this happen? You're talking nonsense. Anan is the best child in the world. She is a top student at Haiching University. You were the ones who wanted to kill Anan when you heard that she helped her mother escape. Anan was very emotional. You were the ones who said that girls were money-losing goods. You said that you would give Anan to me as long as I could give you 20,000 yuan. Anton, who has always been weak-willed, and the Yu family started arguing fiercely on the stage. What the program crew likes most is this kind of shot with strong conflict, where the camera is almost sticking to Mrs. Yu's face. Bullshit. Old Madam Yu stood up, spitting saliva and confusing right and wrong, and then left with her mother in the beginning. How can we not give her a child if her own mother wants it? Who took the 20,000 yuan from you? Show me the evidence. You turned our good girl into a shameless whore who sells herself. How can she get married in the future, God? How can you be so blind? Mrs. Yu's words were so vulgar that the audience in the stands all frowned. How could a grandmother talk about her granddaughter like this? Anton was so angry that she started arguing with Old Lady Yu. Old Lady Yu went up and pulled Aunt Anne's hair, and the stage suddenly became a mess. 2.5 hours later, Yuanan walked out of the Haiching TV station building holding the tearful Aunt Anne's hand. Behind them was the sound of the Yu family members making a hysterical scene at the TV station and refusing to allow the program to be broadcast. You must be in cahoots with that bitch Yu Zhaodi. Old Mrs. Yu sat on the ground and slapped her thighs, saying, if you dare to broadcast it, I will jump off the building of your Haiching TV station. Even if I die and become a ghost, I will not let you bastards go. Hearing this, Anian wiped away her tears and hurriedly pushed Yuanan. Anan, hurry up and leave. While the Yu family is fighting with the TV station and can't take care of you, leave quickly. Don't let the Yu family get involved with you. Someone from the program team will take me back to the hotel later. Yuanan squeezed Aunt Anne's rough hands soothingly. I will take the high-speed train to Yunqing tonight to meet Professor Dong. After I settle down in Yunqing, I will go home and spend the new year with you and Huanyan. Auntie Anne nodded repeatedly and took out a card from her pocket and stuffed it into Yuanan's hand. Take this money. The password is your birthday. Poor family means rich road. Fearing that Yuanan would refuse, Annan added, just give it to me when you can't use it all and go home. I'm not educated, and I'm afraid I'll hold you back if I accompany you to Yunqing. If you bring more money, I'll feel more at ease. She held the bank card and smiled at Annan. Okay, I'll take it. You are right. You are the kindest and best child in the world. If it weren't for you, your mother and I would have. Annan thought of what Yuanan said during the recording of the show just now, and tears couldn't stop falling. You and Huanyan are both Aunt Anne's favorites. Don't listen to the nonsense of those dirty-hearted people in the Yu family. I know, Annan. Okay. I won't say any more. Let's go. Huanyan and I will wait for you to come home. When you come back, Anna will make you your favorite braised pork ribs and eggplant boxes. Aunt Anne raised her hand to wipe away her tears. Watching Yuanan get into a taxi and leave, Anne held the photo of Yuanan and Fu Nanshan in her pocket. And Anne's life has been too hard. She has to do something for Anne. Yuanan packed her luggage before going to the TV station. When I came out of the villa area and took a taxi to the high-speed rail station, she popped up a WeChat request to add a friend. Add a comment. Yuanan, you have guts. Just wait. She frowned and clicked to reject. Before exiting WeChat, she saw Lyn Jinrong's WeChat profile picture and transferred the money for hospitalization and clothes. Seeing that Lyn Jinrong had not received the payment for a long time, she sent a WeChat message. And then, Mr. Lin, I will go to Yunqing tonight. Thank you for your care. Lyn Jinrong replied quickly. Mr. Lin, be careful. And please take the money. The WeChat page did not respond. Maybe Lyn Jinrong was busy. Yuan locked her phone screen and turned to look out the window. Today she is leaving the city where she has lived for many years. At the beginning, she came to this city to live because of Finalizing. Now that you are leaving, you should let go of everything and start over. Yuan sent a message to Anton, asking her to send her a message after returning home tomorrow. The high-speed train from Haicheng to Yunqing started running. Yuan looked down at the time and saw another friend added on WeChat. Click on it. Your scarf fell down. Do you want it back? The portrait is a pair of clasped hands. The man wears a sports watch with distinct joints, and the woman has slender, smooth hands with beautiful nail polish, belonging to Fu Nanshan and Do Yuji's hands. The intertwined fingers show deep affection. It's Fu Nanshan. Chapter 21, Letting It Go. Yuanin was stunned for a moment, and her eyes suddenly felt sore. She did not accept the friend request and only replied, I don't want it anymore. Please throw it away. Thank you. After locking her phone screen, she rested her chin on her hand and stared out the window. The raindrops hit the glass, and through the illuminated car window, Yuanin's indifferent facial features with gauze wrapped around her forehead were vaguely visible. In the years after she woke up, she thought she was looking for the love she had in her youth and all the happiness in her life. But in fact, happiness, that is something that people like her can never obtain in their lifetime. She has been keeping the oath between two people for 2 years and is really tired. From today on, she has to live for herself. She was lucky to have survived the car accident. Life is short but also long. In addition to Fu Nanshan, there is Anton and Huanyan, as well as the things she wants to do and the study she loves. The high-speed train gradually picked up speed, carrying the lonely Yuanin across Haicheng's bright lights blurred by rain. The city of Haicheng has been Yuanin's life for the past decade, with everyone she has ever loved and all her friends. Today, the speeding high-speed rail is leaving this city and the people in it far behind. On the other end of the phone, Fu Nanshan looked at Yuanin's reply and did not move for a long time. The overly polite and distant words made him feel very uncomfortable. He frowned and stared at the phone screen in a daze. Brother-in-law, I toast to you. If you hadn't spent money to help me deal with that woman this time, I would not be able to come out now. Yi Changming raised the wine glass in the direction of Fu Nanshan, raised his head and drank it all. I can't afford to offend the surname Lin, but I can't swallow this humiliation. He is just the adopted son of the Lin family in Kyoto. Why are you so arrogant? Although he is an adopted son, he is very lucky. Everyone in the circle knows that he is the real heir of the Kyoto Lin family. Someone advised Yi Changming, forget it, Lyn Jinrong is someone we can't afford to offend. Yi Changming said nothing and drank another glass of wine. You didn't know that since you met us late, and Anne's biological mother is a relative of Lyn Jinrong. Lyn Jinrong has not been in Haicheng these years, but she has been very protective of An. You drugged An. Can Lyn Jinrong forgive you? Lei Mingwei added wine to Yi Changming. In the future, don't provoke An again, otherwise if you implicate Yu Ji, it will be too late for you to regret it. Yi Changming's eyes were sinister. Can't afford to offend Lyn Jinrong. Can't touch Yuanin. Could it be that he couldn't even move a little mute? He had to vent this anger. Fu Nanshan thought the room was too noisy, so he took the lighter and cigarettes on the table and stood up. I'm going out to smoke a cigarette. In this quaint private club, each box is a separate small courtyard. Fu Nanshan, who was not wearing a coat but only a black high-necked cashmere sweater, sat under the Hui-style veranda with lanterns hanging high. He stepped on the lotus-shaped column base with his black trouser legs tied up in pure black British-style short boots. Amid the sound of rain hitting the tiles, he sent a WeChat message to Do Yuji, reminding her to take medicine and rest. I heard from a friend that An appeared at the high-speed rail station with a suitcase this afternoon. I guess she was leaving Haicheng. Hearing the voice, Fu Nanshan looked up. Lei Mingyue, who handed Fu Nanshan a cigarette, sat down next to him. Fu Nanshan took the cigarette, looked at Lei Mingyue and asked, what kind of person is Yuanin? Lei Mingyue, who was holding the lighter flame with one hand to light a cigarette, turned his head to look at Fu Nanshan with a strange expression. Ever since An woke up and saw you, You have been angry with anyone who mentioned it to you. Why are you suddenly asking her again? Did you remember something? I'm just worried that she'll come back to haunt me again. Fu Nanshan lowered his eyes to light a cigarette, trying to hide his embarrassment. I have no memory of her, and I don't know much about her. I'm very upset. You're worrying too much. Lei Mingyue exhaled a puff of white mist disapprovingly. Although it has a poor family background, she has been noble and arrogant since childhood. In my memory, Yunin has always been a person who keeps his word, especially when it comes to your affairs. What do you mean? Hearing Fu Nanshan's question, Lei Mingyue did not answer immediately, but looked at him with a complicated expression. Nanshan, you have now obtained the divorce certificate with an N as you wished. If you still want to be with Yu Ji, don't dwell on the past between you and Yunin, and look forward. Seeing Fu Nanshan frowning and smoking without saying anything, Lei Mingyue suddenly straightened his back. Tell me the truth. Did you remember something? No. Fu Nanshan lowered his eyes and flicked the ash off his cigarette, saying stubbornly, I'm just worried that she's playing some tricks on me, and that she'll come back and affect me, and Yu Ji. Lei Mingyue thought carefully about Yu Ainan's expression and behavior when she got the marriage certificate, and gave a positive answer. Based on my understanding of Ainan, when she went to get the marriage certificate with you that day, she must have really let go. Really? Fu Nanshan bit the cigarette, exhaled a puff of mist from the corner of his lips, lowered his eyes and fiddled with his phone, and said in a vague voice, That's good. I heard from Yu Ji's cousin Yi Chaming that it was you who let someone leak the news about it in studying at Haiching University to the family in Yujia village. Lei Mingyue fiddled with his lighter. Fu Nanshan said nothing. It was indeed him. That was a month and a half before he and Yu Ainan were drugged and slept together. He was tired of Yu Ainan's pestering because Yu Ainan, his beloved, had repeatedly rejected his proposals and insisted on waiting for him to remember everything in the past. He thought of the family in Yujia village. Originally, he just wanted the Yu family to take Yu Ainan away from Haiching and trap her in Yujia village forever. Unexpectedly, Yu's family thought that it was Yu Unan's grandfather who paid for Yu Ainan's schooling, and they became concerned about his property, so they directly contacted the Searching for Relatives program team. After the show was recorded, the family made a scene in front of the Haiching TV station. The old lady even threatened to jump off the building, saying that the show crew and Ainan were colluding to bully them. Lei Mingyue frowned when he mentioned the Yu family. It seems that they just started a live broadcast, revealing Ann's information on the live broadcast, and ordered netizens to blast Ainan like a fool. Fortunately, the live broadcast room was blocked. Fu Nanshan raised his head only after hearing this. Actually, Lei Mingyue took a deep puff of his cigarette and mustered up the courage to say to Fu Nanshan, I didn't tell the truth to Ainan in the hospital that day. Fu Nanshan's lips moved slightly. What's the truth? It was Mingzhu who gave Zihuai the drug. It's no secret that Mingzhu has always liked Zihuai. It's just that the drugged wine was accidentally drunk by Yu and Ainan. Lei Mingyue pinched his brow with the hand holding the cigarette, and his voice was full of guilt. I told Ainan that Mingzhu did it for her in order to let Ainan withdraw the case, but I think Ainan knows everything. She let Mingzhu go this time, which also means that the previous relationship with us siblings is over, and she will no longer have anything to do with us siblings in the future. Fu Nanshan looked stunned. He had never believed that Yu Ainan did not drug Yu Ainan. He thought that Lei Mingyue and Yu Ainan were acting for him because he felt that the statement that Lei Mingzhu drugged Yu Ainan was far-fetched. But if it was Lei Mingzhu who drugged Xie Zihuai, everything would make sense. So, he really misunderstood Yu Ainan. Across the curling white mist, Lei Mingyue looked at Fu Nanshan seriously. So, let Ainan go. Chapter 22, Love and a Clear Mind. Searching for Relatives is recorded on Wednesdays, and the first episode will be broadcast on time at 8 o'clock on the weekend on Haiching TV and major online platforms. The guest of this episode accidentally pushed Do Yuji down the stairs, which brought a wave of popularity to this episode a few days ago. In addition, topics such as children of abducted women looking for their mothers have also attracted great attention in society. Therefore, when reservations started on the 3 major video websites, the number of reservations exceeded any previous period. Yu Ainan didn't care about these. On Friday, she met the gentle and elegant Professor Dong. Professor Dong talked to Yu Ainan about the confidentiality of this project. In order to prevent the leakage of experimental data, he asked Yu Ainan to sign a confidentiality agreement. Then he personally took Yu Ainan to familiarize herself with the environment in the laboratory, introduced several senior students to her, and personally sent Yu Ainan downstairs to the laboratory. Our lab is short on time and manpower. You may have to spend all your time in the lab on Saturdays and Sundays. However, you can get familiar with it during this period when you first arrive, and you can officially join after the Chinese New Year. Okay, Yu Anan responded. After finishing the business, Professor Dong asked about Yu Anan's life. How is it? Are you adapting to Yunqing? Yeah, it's fine. She smiled and thanked Professor Dong. The night before yesterday, senior brother Ku, who picked me up at the high-speed rail station, said that you had applied for a single dormitory for doctoral students specifically for me. Thank you. This is as it should be, Professor Dong said gently. If you hadn't had a car accident and stayed in bed for 2 years, your Professor Wong would have been ready to apply for a direct doctorate for you. But it doesn't matter. Let's take it slow. As long as a person can wake up, there are endless possibilities. Yu Anan understood what Professor Dong meant, and she nodded gratefully. In a few days, another student will be back from abroad, and the project team will be complete. Professor Dong's cell phone rang. He took out his phone and took a look, then said to Yu Anan, Ku Qingyan said he can't add you on WeChat. Remember to add Ku Qingyan's WeChat later, and ask him to add you to the group. He is your senior brother. If you have any questions in life and study in the future, just ask him. If you encounter difficulties, also look for him. Okay, I understand, teacher. Come on, Yu Anan. Professor Dong patted Yu Anan on the shoulder and said earnestly, focus on the project. Your brain was born for scientific research projects. You shouldn't waste your energy on love affairs. Professor Dong knew about the affair between Yu Anan and Fu Nanshan. After everyone thought that the once promising genius girl had fallen and become a vegetable, she woke up. Before she could be happy, she wasted another 2 years on men. To Professor Dong, this was a huge waste of Yu Anan's brain and talent. Yeah, Yu Anan nodded. Don't worry, I was too stubborn before, but now my mind is clear. Seeing that Yu Anan was able to talk about this relationship calmly and with a clear look in her eyes, Professor Dong, as someone who had experienced it, understood that Yu Anan had indeed let it go, and he finally felt relieved. Professor Dong has seen many geniuses in his many years of working in education, but there are only 2 who really make him feel pity for them, and one of them is Yu Anan. Although it is no longer possible for that person to devote energy to scientific research projects. But fortunately, Yu Anan escaped from the clutches of death, and now she is in love and has a clear mind, so she will definitely achieve great things. In the afternoon, Ku Qingyan brought Yu Anan into the laboratory and asked Yu Anan to do the simplest data sorting first and familiarize himself with their experimental progress and procedures. At 7:30 in the afternoon, the seniors in the laboratory said they wanted to celebrate the addition of a younger junior sister. So a group of people took Yu Anan and sat down in a hot pot restaurant opposite the school. The teacher said today, to welcome our little sisters, you can eat as much as you want, and the teacher will pay the bill. The eldest brother, Ku Qingyan, handed the menus to everyone with a smile. Wow, how happy must the old man be to have recruited our junior sister Yu. He's so generous. Ku Qingyan's girlfriend, senior sister Kai Xiaozhu, handed the menu to Yu Anan. Junior sister Yu, hurry up, give this old man a good rip-off. This old man is usually the most stingy. Let's have a double-flavored hot pot. Junior sister is injured and can't eat spicy food. Senior sister Li Weilon instructed Kai Xiaozhu, who was ordering the soup base. The hot pot restaurant was bustling with people, the hot pot was steaming, and waiters serving the dishes were coming and going. As the guests came in, they shouted, please take your seats, sir, in fluent Sichuan dialect. Senior students told Yu Anan interesting stories about how Professor Dong had been recruiting talents over the years, and there was constant laughter. Surrounded by the bustling city, Yu Anan's eyes were also filled with warmth. At exactly 8 o'clock, when Yu Anan and her senior classmates were happily eating hot pot, the program Searching for Relatives was simultaneously launched on satellite TV and the 3 major video websites. This episode is even being played in hot pot restaurants. The number of viewers on the online platform has been increasing continuously. The seniors around Yu Anan also frequently looked up to watch the show. As Anan couldn't help but step forward and question the Yu family, whether they dared to say that Yu Baodong's mother was abducted. Some people who were watching the show in the hot pot restaurant exclaimed, "Oh my God, his mother was abducted." Senior sister Li Weilon exclaimed. Kai Xiaozhu frowned. If she was abducted, of course she would run away. That old lady said she was good to her daughter-in-law, but it was the daughter-in-law who ran away because she thought the family was poor. Are being abducted and being poor the same thing? Even Ku Qingyan was indignant. Since you know your mother was trafficked, why did you go on the show to look for her? Soon, The entry Jiaoshinshin, G should children born to abducted women look for their mother's hashtag became a hot search. Yuanan lowered her eyes and used a serving chopstick to pick up dishes and boiled meat rolls for her seniors who were all staring at the TV. 40 minutes later. As old lady Yu cried on the show about Yu Zhaodi not learning her lesson, not getting married and having children early, and drugging and having sex because she needed a man, and her nude photos were posted about her. Annan and old lady Yu started arguing that Yu Anan was a good child. The entry hashtag Zhao Dian and Haiching University drugged and had sex hashtag also became popular. Haiching University? Kai Xiaozhu turned to look at Yu Anan, her eyes full of curiosity. Junior sister, you are from Haiching University. Is this really the case in your school? Yu Anan nodded and said frankly, yes, but it was not a special drug. It's just that both of them drank the drug drink by mistake, and the photo was taken after the incident. Who posted the photo? Was it that guy? Ku Qingyan frowned. Yu Anan took a tissue and wiped her mouth. She was ready to be questioned. If they asked her if she knew this Yu Zhaodi, she would tell them truthfully that it was her. Why? Li Weilan was puzzled. Is it to show off? Because the boy had a girl he liked, and his beloved girl wanted to leave the country after hearing about this. So he followed other people's advice and posted the photos. When Yu Anan talks about this incident again now, she no longer feels the heart-wrenching pain she did at the beginning. Chapter 23 Malice. She just thought it was ridiculous that Fu Nanshan posted her photo to threaten Do Yuji to stay. Bah! Scumbag! Kai Xiaozhu hates this kind of scumbag the most. This kind of man is really the most disgusting. In this kind of situation, the victims are usually women. The seniors had no intention of asking who Zhaodi was, and they all started complaining about the scumbag. Yu Anan looked up at the TV again. In the program, Mrs. Yu cursed very badly. The host Tang Yan coughed twice to interrupt Mrs. Yu and said, after the program team visited many places, it was confirmed that Yu Baodong's mother had indeed passed away. Before Tang Yan could finish his words, old lady Yu interrupted him emotionally. Baodong's grandfather is still alive. Old Mrs. Yu clapped her hands loudly. Baodong's grandfather has only one daughter, Baodong's mother. Now that Baodong's mother is gone, he has no relatives around him. Yu Zhaodi is a girl and a shameless slut. She can't be relied on. Look at our Baodong. Our Baodong is a boy. Baodong should be filial to his grandfather. But this and Yu Zhaodi are eyeing his grandfather's property and refuse to give us his grandfather's phone number and address. Poor Baodong's grandfather is old now and has no one to rely on. You're talking nonsense. Aunt Anne's chest was heaving with anger. She pointed at old lady Yu's nose and said, and it has never contacted her grandfather in these years, for fear of bringing up her grandfather's sad memories. It's obviously you who have set your sights on an Anne's grandfather's house. And you also want her grandfather to buy a car for Yu Baodong as a betrothal gift. The discussion about the show and the hot pot restaurant suddenly exploded. You really are eyeing my grandfather's property. From what the old lady said, it seems that she is thinking about him. It could also be a drama about a sister and a brother fighting over the family property of their grandfather. On TV, Tang Yan said, we also contacted Baodong's grandfather, Mr. Lynn, and had a telephone conversation with him. In order to protect Mr. Lynn's privacy, the audio has been processed. Let's listen. I don't want to see those two children. Mr. Lynn's voice was processed, but it still made people feel very elegant. When I think of them, I will remember how my daughter was tortured and died tragically on the operating table. I think of my wife who died of depression because of my daughter. The Yu family are all beasts. They are the evidence of my daughter's torture. I hope they will not disturb my life for the rest of their lives. After I die, all my property will be donated to the Foundation for Rescuing Abducted Women and Children. That's it. The call was cut off. The audience was very understanding. In this case, although the children did nothing wrong, the fact that they were born guilty is irrefutable. It is understandable that the old man does not want to see the child that his daughter was forced to give birth to. Not to mention, this family seemed to want to use blood ties to kidnap Mr. Lynn and take his property. How can that be possible? How can we give our property to others? Yu Jiawang was so angry that he jumped up and down, blurting out, that is our Baodong's property. Yu Baodong's aunt was also horrified and said angrily, Baodong's grandfather only has my sister-in-law as his daughter. Now that my sister-in-law is gone, Baodong should take care of his grandfather until the end of his life. Baodong and his grandfather are related by blood. Hostang, can you help us contact his grandfather again? Or give us the address or phone number? We will go find his grandfather ourselves. The audience's three perspectives were refreshed. Senior sisterly Waylon's eyes widened. Good. I just thought they were here for blood ties, but I didn't expect they were really after the old man's property. Kai Xiaozhu was filled with righteous indignation. This shameless man has come up with new tricks. He kidnapped someone's daughter, killed her, and now he wants her property. The previous episode of the show is coming to an end. Tang Yan faced the camera and said to the audience calmly, in addition to contacting Baodong's grandfather, our program team also contacted Baodong's sister. Baodong's sister provided a recording of the call and hoped that it could be played on the program. Let's listen to this recording in the next program to see what kind of information it can bring us. The TV showed a close-up of Yu Baodong, who immediately became alert with a visibly raised expression when he heard the word recording. What recording are you playing? The close-up was given to Yu Jiawang again. He stood up excitedly. Yu Zhaodi is a shameless slut. She has slept with all the men in the university. How can we believe her words? Tang Yan remained motionless. Dear viewers, see you in the next episode. Oh. How come the last episode has ended? Can you tell us what the content of the recording is? Kai Xiaozhu was extremely anxious, and his curiosity about the recording was piqued. Kuchingyin smiled and picked up a piece of food for Kai Xiaozhu with his chopsticks. Why are you so impatient? We will know next Friday. Eat quickly. The first part of the 19th episode of Searching for Family, Looking for the Kidnapped Mother, ends with Annan saying with tears in her eyes, how can you slander Annan like this? Do you still have a conscience? The entry hashtag, should the son of a trafficked woman look for his mother or his grandfather's property hashtag also became popular. The audience's discussion became more heated, especially before the last episode came to an end. Yu Zhaodi, who was described by Old Lady Yu as a lowly and dissolute person, was actually a student at Haicheng University, one of the top universities in the country. This caused the hot search term hashtag Zhao Dian and Haicheng University drugged and climbed in a bed hashtag to climb up at an extremely fast speed. At the beginning, most netizens thought that someone who named his granddaughter Zhaodi must be biased towards boys, and that he must be a mean old lady who slandered the girl named Yu Zhaodi. But soon, some netizens dug up the incident in which Yu Anan was photographed at Haicheng University. Someone also posted an apology letter from the prince of Haicheng Fu family in the comment section. Even the photos that Fu Nanchen had posted at Haicheng University before, both censored and uncensored, were released. In the photo, although Yu Anan wrapped her body with a quilt, the old scars on her shoulders and arms were clearly visible. Malicious comments flooded the internet. Fu Duo, damn, this is true. She drugged the prince of the Fu family and had sex with him. This woman is really ambitious. Good fortune comes with money. Look at the injuries on her body. Has the young lady been playing a lot since she was a child? Look at the brand on her arm. It was M's fault. Shocked like a monkey. How can such a person be admitted to Shanghai City University? How come they accept everyone? At Haicheng University, why don't you expel this kind of student and keep him for the new year? Hey. She's pretty. How much per night? She's been played with so much. Like some cabbage. As expected, like fathers, like sons, like daughters. Her biological father is a rapist who imprisoned and tortured her, and she is a scheming woman who drugged and climbed into bed with someone in order to get married. I'm vomiting. Xiaomaner. It's so fucking disgusting. Poor women who have been trafficked and their families are almost destroyed. The rapists are so bad. The men are vicious and the women are disgusting. One covets the property of an elderly man who has lost his parents, and the other drugs a rich man to get into his bed. How despicable. Chapter 24 Lost. Someone searched for Yu Anan's Weibo, and the insults in the private messages were as harsh as they could be. Call her the bastard of a rapist and the bastard of a human trafficker. Just as Tang Yan said, according to the usual practice of the program crew, they will definitely maximize the topic and heat in the first episode of the program. And perhaps Yu Anan will be pushed to the forefront first. Yu Anan had a rough idea in mind, so she was not in a hurry. Instead, she hoped that the discussion would be more heated. That way, the more people pay attention to the next episode, the easier it will be for her to succeed in what she wants to do. She came out of the shower, put down her phone, turned off the light, and prepared to go to bed when her phone vibrated. Seeing that it was Annan calling, she answered the call and put it to her ear. Annan, it's me? Xiezi's voice came from the other end of the phone. Annan had an accident. Yu Anan's hair stood up all of a sudden. She threw off the quilt, stood up, turned on the light, and took out her clothes, but her voice still trembled. What do you mean Annan is in trouble? Annan was in a car accident and is in my sister's hospital. Hasn't Annan already gone back? How come she is in Haicheng? Yu Anan's voice kept getting louder. Obviously, Annan called her yesterday afternoon to let her know she was safe and at home, and that Huanyin was doing well too. I don't know either. Come to the hospital first. Xie Huai didn't know that Yu Anan had already left Haiqing. I'll be there right now. Please help me take good care of Annan. After hanging up the phone, Yu Anan changed her clothes with trembling hands. She forced herself to stay calm because people are prone to making mistakes when they panic. After getting her ID, Yu Anan went straight to the airport, took a taxi, and finally caught the last flight to Haiqing. Kyoto, the old house of the Lin family. In the study, Yu Anan's biological grandfather, Mr. Lyn Jinrong, sat in front of the sea of tea and pushed the teacup in front of Lyn Jinrong. Lyn Jinrong, who was wearing glasses, had his silver hair combed meticulously and wore a brown cashmere cardigan over his shirt. The old man was in his 70s, but he had maintained a very well-maintained figure and exuded an elegant and restrained aura in his every move. I didn't get to see the third daughter of the Su family in Haiqing in time. How do you feel after meeting her today? Lyn Jinrong picked up the teacup and drank tea. Lyn Jinrong picked up the steaming clear tea in front of her, and her every move was filled with arrogance and pride. He didn't seem to care much. Miss Su San is very ambitious. If she gets married, she will be a great help, but she is too strong and may not be suitable to be the wife of the adopted son of the Lin family. After all, you still want that child to return to the Lin family. Lyn Jinrong lowered his eyes and fiddled with the tea set and asked casually, "How is that child?" "I got a divorce certificate from the young master of the Fu family." Lyn Jinrong put down the teacup and told the truth. "I've been invited by Professor Dong of Yinqing University to join his research team. She drugged me and had sex with me. Someone posted her photos on her. After she got the divorce certificate, she was drugged again. The Yu family came to her house." Lyn Jinrong held the jade-like teacup to his lips. "She solved her problems by running away, leaving the best university in the country and going to Yinqing University." Lyn Jinrong didn't expect that Lyn Jinrong was not indifferent to Yu Anan. Sometimes people are too sentimental and too moral, and they will be wronged. Lyn Jinrong said slowly, "But she is not an indecisive person. Although Yinqing University is not as famous as Haiqing University, Professor Dong is the most authoritative genetic biology expert in the country. He only stayed in Haiqing for his deceased wife. She wants to make achievements in genetic biology in the future, and the best choice is Professor Dong as her teacher." As soon as he finished speaking, Lyn Jinrong's phone vibrated. He stood up with his phone, walked to the French window, and answered the call. "Say, sir, there's news from Haiqing. 2 hours ago, Miss Yu Anan's former adoptive mother went to look for Mr. Fu and got into a car accident. She couldn't be saved," Assistant Su said. Lyn Jinrong's pupil shrank, and he clenched his phone and replied, "Got it." After hanging up the phone, he picked up the suit hanging on the back of the seat and put it on. "I have something to do, and I have to leave first. You should get to know the third daughter of the Su family." Lyn Jinrong leaned back on his chair with his legs crossed and picked up the chess record on the Wang Wali wood table beside him. "The Lin family will be handed over to you sooner or later. With the help of the Su family, your position on the board of directors will be more stable in the future." What this meant was that Lyn Jinrong was very satisfied with the third daughter of the Su family, and Lyn Jinrong had to agree even if she didn't want to. He knew that there was still a long way to go before Lyn Jinrong could accept Yu Anan. Lyn Jinrong is the only daughter of Lyn Jinrong. She was afraid that she would melt if she was held in her mouth, and afraid that she would fall if she was held in her hands. The apple of the Lyn families, I was tortured by the Yu family to the point where her life was worse than death. She suffered a mental breakdown, and no one recognized her when she returned. She attempted suicide several times. To Lyn Jinrong, everyone in the Yu family is an enemy, including the 2 children born to Lyn Jinrong, Yu Anan and Yu Baodong. If Yu Anan had not taken Lyn Jinrong away from Yujia village, the Lyn family would not have turned a blind eye and allowed Lyn Jinrong to help Yu Anan. "I understand." Lyn Jinrong nodded slightly to Lyn Jinrong. Just as Lyn Jinrong opened the door of the study and prepared to leave, Lyn Jinrong spoke again lightly. "No matter what I said over the years, you always felt guilty towards Yu Anan, thinking that you took Yu Anan's place, so I never stopped you from helping Yu Anan, and now it's almost over. Don't interfere in Yu Anan's affairs in the future." He turned around, glanced at Lyn Jinrong, who was leaning against the lamp and looking through the chess manual, and walked out in silence. "Jinrong, are you leaving now?" Aunt Su walked towards the study room, carrying 2 bowls of snow pear birds' nests, and said with a smile, "Let me bring you the snow pear birds' nests." The weather in Kyoto is dry these days, and snow birds' nests are the best for moistening the lungs. No, I have something else to do. Before Su-ma could say anything, Lyn Jinrong had already walked around her and hurried downstairs. What happened that you're in such a hurry? Aunt Sue muttered in confusion. She brought the Sydney bird's nest into the study and placed it next to Lyn Jigwa. The company is so busy. Jinrong still remembers to go out so late. Lyn Jigwa looked at the chess record in his hand without looking up and said with a smile, "It shouldn't be a company matter. Is Jinhua asleep?" "I'm asleep," Aunt Sue said with a smile. "Jinhua asked me to cook this bird's nest made of snow pear for you. It was Jinhua who picked it out." "Really?" Hearing this, Lyn Jigwa lowered his crossed legs, put the chess manual aside, and opened the lid of the stew pot with a smile in his eyes. "It looks good." Lyn Jinrong came out of the Lyn family's old house and headed straight for the airport. Lyn Jinrong, who was sitting in the back seat of the car, lowered his eyes and stroked his phone. The neon lights outside the window reflected his sharp face. "I have my own mother. My mother is Annan, so I won't take your Lyn family's card." This is what 17-year-old Yu Anan said when she returned the bank card to him. Later, Yu Anan was in a car accident, and Annan stayed by her side in the hospital. If Lyn Jinrong hadn't insisted on keeping Yu Anan in the hospital, Anna would have taken Yu Anan home so that she could take care of Anan while running her small business. Lyn Jinrong never questioned the relationship between Aunt An and Yu Anan. At the age of 10, Yu Anan lost her biological mother, but had an adoptive mother who loved her. Now even my adoptive mother has been lost. Chapter 25, Death. As soon as Yu Anan got off the plane, she called Xie Zihuai and asked, "How is Annan?" Xie Zihuai didn't dare to tell Yu Anan. He just said, still in the operating room. After hanging up the phone, Yu Anan didn't bother to queue up and grab someone else's taxi at the taxi queue. The driver, who was full of justice, originally wanted Yu Anan to go down and queue up, but when he saw Yu Anan's red eyes and told her the address of the hospital, he did not dare to delay and set off for the hospital, and even said a few words of comfort. "Little girl, is your family member in the hospital? Don't worry. There are no cars on the road at this time, so we can get to the hospital quickly." "Yeah," Yu Anan responded, and her fingers holding the phone turned white. In front of the hospital, Xie Zihuai calculated the time and waited for Yu Anan at the door with an umbrella. While waiting, Xie Zihuai paced back and forth, rehearsing over and over in his mind how to tell Yu Anan the news of Aunt Anne's death when he met her later. But news of death is news of death, no matter how tactfully he said it. It would not alleviate Yu Anan's pain in the slightest. Before Xie Zihuai could organize his words, the taxi carrying Yu Anan had already stopped in front of the hospital. Seeing Yu Anan pushing open the car door, Xie Zihuai hurried down the stairs and held the umbrella above Yu Anan's head. "Is the operation not over yet?" Yu Anan was flustered. She closed the car door and walked into the hospital. "Which floor is the operating room?" "Annette." Xie Zihuai paused and grabbed Yu Anan's arm. She turned around and looked at Xie Zihuai, who was full of sadness. Her whole body was tense like a fully drawn bow. Her throat seemed to be blocked by something, and she spoke with difficulty. "Which floor? On which floor?" Xie Zihuai's Adam's apple rolled, and after squeezing the umbrella handle tightly, he still spoke. "And then the doctor tried hard but couldn't keep her alive. In fact, Annan had passed away before you got off the plane." Yu Anan's mind went blank. The only sound she could hear was the rain washing against the umbrella. She felt as if all her strength had been drained away and her legs went weak. Her eyes were filled with tears, and she dared not blink. "Which floor is Annan on?" "It has been moved to the morgue." As soon as Xie Zihuai finished speaking, Yu Anan turned around and walked towards the hospital, but she missed a step. "Annette." Xie Zihuai quickly supported the person and walked inside with the exhausted Yu Anan. He told Annan what happened. Annan stayed in Haicheng to see Nanshan. Today, she went to have dinner at Yushi Pavilion after learning that Nanshan was there. As a result, the truck on that road hit the oncoming car in order to avoid the little girl who suddenly rushed into the middle of the road chasing a balloon. The car lost control and rushed onto the sidewalk, and that's when the accident happened. Yu Anan couldn't imagine that scene. She was like a fool. She was mechanically taken into the elevator by Xie Zihuai. She stopped in a daze at the door of the morgue, her fingers tightly clutching her clothes. Tears rushed out, and her throat was so sore that it became difficult to breathe. I'll go in by myself." Yu Anan's voice was so hoarse that she could hardly make a sound. "Okay." Xie Zihuai responded and opened the door for Yu Anan. In the cold morgue, Annan lay quietly under a white sheet. Aunt Anne's wrist, which was clotted with blood, was hanging by the bed, and she was still wearing the bracelet that Yuanin and Huanyin had made for her during the Chinese New Year last year. Her legs felt like they were filled with lead, and she couldn't lift them. It took her a long time to finally move to the edge of the bed. Her throat rolled over, and she gently grasped Anne's already cold hand and uncovered the white cloth covering her. Aunt Anne's pale face appeared in front of her. Yuanin leaned over and held Aunt Anne's hand tightly, then gently placed it on her face. The grief in her heart almost suffocated her. Ontian! She choked and cried softly, her throat so sore that she could hardly make a sound. Ontian! She burst into tears and finally broke down and lost control. She hugged Annie in and cried loudly. You promised to make braised pork ribs and eggplant boxes for me. She doesn't want Fu Nanshan anymore? I really don't want Fu Nanshan anymore. She just wants Anna to be well. Xie Zihuai stood outside the morgue, his eyes welling up as he listened to Yu Ainan's cries of pain. Growing up with Yu Ainan, he rarely saw Yu Ainan cry. Even when she woke up from the hospital and found that Fu Nanshan had lost his memory and fell in love with someone else, she just wiped away her tears and said that she wanted to restore Fu Nanshan's memory. I've never cried so hard before. He thought that Yu Ainan was just as others said, cold-hearted by nature, and could face anything calmly. After standing outside the morgue for nearly 2 hours, until there was no more crying coming from inside, Xie Zihuai walked to the door and raised his hand to push it open a crack. Inside, Yu Ainan was sitting on the bed where Annan was placed, her hair disheveled, her eyes bloodshot, her face pressed tightly against Aunt Anne's bloody hand, her whole body dazed, as if she had been numb. Just as Xie Zihuai was about to go in, he heard Do Yuji's voice coming from the elevator. When you see Senior Yu later, talk to her nicely. Aunt Anne is Senior Yu's adoptive mother. No matter what, you shouldn't push her. Upon learning that Yu Ainan had arrived, Do Yuji dragged Fu Nanshan, whose arm was in a cast, out of the elevator. Fu Nanshan looked impatient and shook his right arm, hanging in front of his chest. If I hadn't saved her, would my arm have been broken? Yu Ainan's adoptive mother insisted on pulling me, so it's not normal for me to push her. Fu Ninkin, Do Yuji stopped and stared at Fu Nanshan. The problem is that there was a car accident and Annan passed away. Fu Nanshan pursed his lips tightly. If it were in the past, he would have retorted, because it was not him who caused the car to rush onto the sidewalk. But perhaps it was out of the hidden guilt for drugging Yu Ainan that night. Perhaps it was because he knew that Yu Ainan would have committed suicide if she had not met him, which made him understand that the reason why Yu Ainan had been holding on to him for the past 2 years was not as dirty as he thought. Surprisingly, he didn't refute. Okay. Seeing Do Yuji's serious face, Fu Nanshan softened his voice and raised his hand to pinch Do Yuji's cheek. I understand. Don't be angry. Stop it. Do Yuji grabbed Fu Nanshan's left hand and pulled him forward. Seeing Xie Zihuai standing at the door of the morgue, she asked, Why aren't you in there with Senior Yu? And then said she wanted to be alone. Xie Zihuai gently closed the door of the morgue and looked at Fu Nanshan, hesitating. I've never seen an in collapse like this. Fu Nanshan paused and frowned. Nanshan, go back to the ward. Xie Zihuai lowered his voice and said, If Annan knew that you pushed Annan, I'm afraid. Xie Zihuai, don't be so ridiculous. Fu Nanshan could no longer suppress his anger. He sneered and said dissatisfiedly, It was Yu Ainan's adoptive mother who insisted on pulling me. I didn't push her under the wheel. Did I drive the car onto the sidewalk? Why are you guys saying it as if it was my fault? But if you hadn't pushed her that time, the car wouldn't have hit Annan. Do Yuji raised her voice slightly, seeming very angry that Fu Nanshan refused to admit his mistake. The door of the morgue suddenly opened. Chapter 26, Get Out. Xie Zihuai and Do Yuji turn around. Annan, you Senior Yu. In the dim light and shadows in the corridor, Yu Ainan's face was pale, and her bloodshot eyes stared at Fu Nanshan. You pushed Annan? Yu Ainan's voice was hoarse and frighteningly cold. Senior Yu, Brother Nanshan didn't mean it. At that time, Annan pulled Nanshan and insisted that he look at the photos, so Nanshan pushed Annan. They were on the sidewalk at the time, and no one expected a car to rush over. Do Yuji hurriedly explained to Yu Ainan, carefully holding her arm. Brother Nanshan saw the car rushing over and immediately went to pull Annan, but he failed to save Annan and his arm was broken. He didn't think. Yu Ainan couldn't hear anything Do Yuji said. Her mind was full of what Do Yuji had just said. But if you hadn't pushed her that time, the car wouldn't have hit Annan. The rage and indignation in her heart almost burned her to ashes. Tears welled up in her eyes. She endured the pain as if a knife was tearing her apart, pushed Do Yuji away, rushed forward, and slapped Fu Nanshan hard in the face. Yuanin used all her strength to slap Fu Nanshan, causing his face to tilt to the side. His ears were buzzing, and he was stunned. Fu Nanshan, give me back my Anon! She pushed and hit Fu Nanshan hard, crying hysterically like a madman. But the slap just now had already used up all her strength, and her beating did not hurt Fu Nanshan at all. Yuanin suffered a mental breakdown and kept asking Fu Nanshan to return Anon to her. She was in so much pain that she felt like she was being fried in oil. If it weren't for her, Anon wouldn't have stayed in Haicheng, wouldn't have gone to find Fu Nanshan, and wouldn't have had the car accident. Yuanin had never regretted falling in love with Fu Nanshan so much in her life. If I hadn't fallen in love with Fu Nanshan, nothing would have happened. Xie Zihuai originally wanted to step forward to stop him, but Do Yuji stopped him. It's good to let Senior Yu vent her anger. Fu Nanshan took 2 steps back and let Yuanin hit him. His cheeks were burning with pain, and his temper was on the verge of exploding. Seeing that Yuanin was almost exhausted and on the verge of collapse, and almost unable to cry, Do Yuji hurriedly stepped forward to hold Yuanin. Senior Sister Yu, stop hitting me. Yuanin, with tears all over her face and looking like a madman, shook off Do Yuji's hand that was holding her. Do Yuji sprained her high heels and was supported by Xie Zihuai. Yuanin also slammed into the wall, her hair disheveled as she screamed, "Get out! All of you get out! All of you get out!" Fu Nanshan's eyes were gloomy. He grabbed Yuanin's arm and lifted her up, saying in a bad tone, "Yuanin, you can come at me, but try touching a strand of Yuji's hair." Do Yuji endured the pain in her feet and walked forward to pull Fu Nanshan. "Brother Nanshan, don't do this to Senior Yu. Have you forgotten what you promised me?" Fu Nanshan, let him go. Xie Zihuai stretched out his hand to protect the exhausted Yuanin, but before he touched anyone, a large hand with distinct joints had already embraced Yuanin, pulled away Fu Nanshan's hand that was holding Yuanin's arm, and pushed Fu Nanshan, who had a stunned expression, away. The dim light in the corridor reflected the strong contours of Lyn Jinrong's facial features. He lowered his head with a stern expression, and his eyes behind the gold-rimmed glasses on his high nose were dark and deep. He looked at the girl who was leaning on his arms and could barely stand, and said, "Anin, you are my sister. You have to cheer up after such a big thing." Thinking of an Huanyan, Yuanin could hardly stand. If Huanyan knew that her mother was gone, how scared she would be. "Get out! Get out!" Yuanin was crying, and her whole body was shaking. Her eyes were as red as blood, like a devil from hell. She stared at Fu Nanshan and waved her arms weakly. "Get out!" Lyn Jinrong raised her eyes. "Why don't you leave yet? Do you need Mr. Fu to come and invite you in person?" Fu Nanshan glanced at Lyn Jinrong, who had a sullen expression. Stimulated by the coldness in Lyn Jinrong's eyes, he hugged Do Yuji, who had sprained her ankle, and left. However, before entering the elevator, he couldn't help but look back in the direction of Yuanin. "Thank you for your hard work today. Go back and have a rest," Lyn Jinrong said to Xie Zihuai. On the way here, Lyn Jinrong had already understood the whole story. It was Xie Zihuai who took care of Aunt Anne's accident. Xie Zihuai looked at Yuanin, who was almost slipping due to exhaustion and was hugged by Lyn Jinrong, and didn't want to leave, but Assistant Su had already made a gesture to Xie Zihuai to invite him. "Mr. Xie, well, please try to persuade Nin." Xie Zihuai thought that after all, Lyn Jinrong and Yuanin were relatives, and perhaps Yuanin would listen to some of Lyn Jinrong's words. When he reached the elevator, Xie Zihuai turned around and saw Lyn Jinrong gently stroking Yuanin's head. He whispered something to Yuanin. Yuanin tightly grasped his woolen coat with both hands and buried her head in Lyn Jinrong's arms and cried bitterly. "Call me if you have anything," Xie Zihuai said to Assistant Su. "Okay." Assistant Su held the elevator door for Xie Zihuai and helped Xie Zihuai into the elevator. Assistant Su watched Xie Zihuai leave, but tactfully did not go over and stood in the elevator waiting. It was not until the people from the funeral home arrived at the hospital that Yuanin, who had broken down several times and was exhausted, forced herself to wipe Aunt Anne's face and body and change her into clean clothes. Yuanin went along and watched Aunt Anne's body being placed. She choked up as she completed the body transfer procedures, then squatted under a street light, holding the payment receipt and death certificate, and cried bitterly. Lyn Jinrong stood beside Yuanin with an umbrella, shielding her from the drizzle that was intertwined with the dim lights. After a long time, Lyn Jinrong squatted down, gently stroked her head, and let Yuanin, who had cried to exhaustion, lean on her arms. I was wrong. I was really wrong. Yu Anan choked and murmured, I shouldn't have gone back to the Fu family with Fu Nanshan. I shouldn't have been with Fu Nanshan. I was wrong. I was really wrong. Su Jiying. Lyn Jinrong called out, handed the umbrella to Assistant Su, who came running over, and carried Yu Anan sideways into the car. It was already daybreak when we returned to the villa. Even though she was exhausted and fell asleep, Yu Anan still kept crying. After settling Yu Anan, Lyn Jinrong realized that her shoulders were soaked. He sat on the edge of the bed, looking at Yu Anan, who was mumbling something in her dream, and raised his hand to brush away the hair that was stuck to her face. But before touching Yu Anan, he clenched his fingers with great restraint and took a tissue from the bedside table to wipe away the tears from the corners of her eyes. He stood up, closed the curtains, turned off the desk lamp, and walked out of the master bedroom. Sir, I've checked it out. Assistant Su saw Lyn Jinrong coming out and handed him the tablet. The surveillance camera at the entrance of the restaurant captured the scene very clearly. Anan walked up to hand the photo to Fu Nanshan, but was impatiently pushed away by Fu Nanshan. However, when he saw a car rushing onto the sidewalk and the crowd screaming and running away, Fu Nanshan did reach out to pull Anan back, but it was too late. The driver was a novice who had just obtained his driver's license not long ago. He was caught off guard by the sudden accident. Assistant Su whispered, there is really no inside story here. Chapter 27, Compensation. After a sleepless night, Lyn Jinrong's handsome and clear face showed fatigue, and his eyes were bloodshot. Miss Anan, are you okay? Assistant Su has been with Lyn Jinrong for so many years. If Lyn Jinrong knows about Yu Anan, he must know about it. This is also the first time he has seen Yu Anan break down emotionally. Lyn Jinrong didn't answer, but returned the tablet to Assistant Su. You've worked hard. Eat something and go rest first. After calling Professor Dong to explain Yu Anan's situation, Lyn Jinrong took her clothes and went to the guest room to take a shower. When Yu Anan opened her eyes, which were swollen like walnuts, everything in front of her was blurry. She held down her head, which was about to explode. It seemed like I had a dream that Anna was gone. When Yu Anan saw clearly that this was the master bedroom of Lyn Jinrong's villa in Haicheng, she realized Anna was really gone. She blinked lightly, tears welling up from her hot eyes. She wiped away the tears with the back of her hand, stood up, and looked for her shoes under the bed. Lyn Jinrong was right. Huan Yin was still young. If she didn't concentrate on dealing with such a big thing, Huan Yin would be very scared. She is the elder sister. She had to deal with Aunt Anne's funeral and arrange Huan Yin's future life. But she couldn't find her shoes under the bed for a long time. You're awake. Lyn Jinrong, who had been dozing off on the sofa for a while, got up when she heard the noise, walked to the bedroom door, and handed Yu Anan the slippers that Wang Ma had given her before bed. Yu Anan clutched the bed sheet tightly with both hands, feeling very complicated. It was she who told Lyn Jinrong that she hoped he would not have any contact with her in the future, because Lyn Jinrong is the adopted son of the Lyn family. She was afraid that someone would find out something and know about her biological mother's past. Rumors can drive people crazy. She didn't want her biological mother to go through that again. However, when she was most helpless and collapsed, if Lyn Jinrong had not appeared beside her in time to remind her, she would have even thought of dying with Fu Nanshan after learning that it was Fu Nanshan who pushed Anan last night. I'm sorry. Yu Anan closed her eyes, tears like a broken string, choked up, and apologized to Lyn Jinrong. I'm causing you trouble again. Yu Anan, in the eyes of others, you are a relative of my original family. It is reasonable for me to intervene when you encounter problems, and it will not implicate the Lyn family. Lyn Jinrong squatted down, put slippers on Yu Anan's feet, looked up, and stared at her. You don't have to avoid me like a snake. But then went to bed. It was her fault. She was drugged and unconscious and insisted on having him. Yu Anan gripped the bed sheet more and more tightly. She no longer had the energy to think about these things. When she opened her eyes again, she let out a long breath and wiped away her tears with her hands. She seemed to have cheered up. I know. If I encounter something beyond my ability, I will ask you for help. Lyn Jinrong pursed her lips, stood up, and glanced at her watch. Auntie Anne's body is already on the way to Dongjiang town. You should eat something first and sleep for a while on the plane. Yu Anan nodded. She perked up and saw the message Huan Yin sent her last night on her phone. And Huan Yin said that Anan did not send her any message last night, and no one answered the phone, which made her very anxious and uneasy. After adjusting her mood, Yu Anan called Huan Yin back. The call was answered quickly. Happy face. Knock, knock. The sound of Huan Yin tapping came from the other end of the phone. And Huan Yin can't speak. Whenever she contacts me, she usually sends messages, and when she calls me, she responds by tapping. Annie and I will be back in the evening. There was no one around in Huanyan, and Yuanan didn't dare tell her the news of Aunt Anne's death. Knock, knock. Unable to hold back tears, she said, I have something else to do. I'll hang up now. Knock, knock. After hanging up the phone, Yuanan forced herself to eat something. At the dinner table, Assistant Sue and Yuanan talked about the surveillance video, which showed that Fu Nanshan did push Annan, but when he saw a car rushing onto the sidewalk, Fu Nanshan did want to pull Annan back, and his arm was broken while trying to save Annan. Originally, Assistant Sue didn't have the heart to let Yuanan watch the video, but Yuanan still insisted on watching it. In the video, Annan was holding a photo and trying her best to get closer to Fu Nanshan. Because there was no sound, she couldn't hear what Annan was saying, but from her expression she knew that Annan was begging Fu Nanshan to look at the photo. Her eyes were red, and she didn't finish watching the video. She insisted on waiting until the car rushed onto the sidewalk. Fu Nanshan reached out to pull Annan, but she held the tablet computer, closed her eyes, and covered her face with her hands, but she couldn't hold back her tears. Lyn Jinrong took the tablet away, put the hot milk next to Yuanan, and turned to tell Assistant Sue, let Lawyer Fong from the legal department of the Haiqing branch handle this matter. Aunt Anne's daughter is not yet an adult, so try to get more compensation. Okay, Assistant Sue responded, I have already booked the flight. It will depart at 10:30 and arrive in Jinjiang City at 12:25. It will take about an hour and a half to drive to Dongjiang Town. After hearing what Assistant Sue said, Yuanan took out a tissue, pressed her swollen eyes, and said in a nasal voice, I'll go back to Dongjiang Town by myself. Seeing Lyn Jinrong looking at her, she spoke slowly. Annan has no relatives except me and Yan. She was trafficked to Yuja village because of her careless friendships, so she hasn't had many friends in these years. It's good that Huanyan and I can send Annan off. I'll trouble you with the compensation for the car accident. If you can get more compensation, Huanyan's future life will also be guaranteed. Lyn Jinrong is very busy. Yuanan knows it. The matter of car accident compensation can be entrusted to a lawyer, so there is no need to trouble Lyn Jinrong and her to go to Dongjiang Town. Okay. Lyn Jinrong picked up the coffee cup at hand. Let Assistant Sue accompany you. Assistant Sue is a waste of talent following me. I could do it on my own. Just ask the driver to take me to the airport. Yuanan seemed to have found a way to get along with Lyn Jinrong. After rejecting Lyn Jinrong's kindness, she asked him to help without wasting his time, which Lyn Jinrong could not refuse. Okay. Lyn Jinrong nodded and put the coffee cup aside. After eating a little, the driver took Yuanan to the airport. Seeing that Yuanan didn't eat much, Wang Ma made a sandwich for her to eat on the way to the airport. After seeing off Yuanan, Assistant Sue said to Lyn Jinrong, the chairman's assistant called and said that we have booked a seat for tonight's concert. The chairman asked you to bring Miss Sue with you. The concert will be at 7:30 p.m., and we will arrange a flight back to Kyoto at 12:20 p.m. Do you think this is okay? The handsome and tall man stood in front of the French window of the study on the second floor. He watched the car carrying Yuanan leave before he said, push it. Assistant Sue, who was arranging his schedule on the tablet, looked up in surprise. Just say that there's something going on at the Haiqing branch. Assistant Sue pursed his lips and spoke after a while. Sir, although I am only your assistant, I have followed you for so many years, and I regard you as my brother. To be honest, sir, I don't think you should refuse the chairman. Chapter 28 Assistants. Seeing Lyn Jinrong's deep eyes looking at him, Assistant Sue turned off the tablet computer and spoke seriously despite the pressure brought by Lyn Jinrong. Your status is special. The chairman actually doesn't want you to have any contact with Miss Annan anymore. But you have repeatedly disobeyed the chairman for Miss Annan over the years, and even supported Foos for Miss Annan. The chairman is already very unhappy. If you still don't follow the chairman's arrangements on marriage, I'm afraid it will be difficult for you to take over Lyn's in the future. Mainly, Lyn Jinrong helped Yuanan under pressure behind her back and never said it out loud. If Yuanan was Fu's daughter-in-law, she might be able to help Lyn Jinrong in the future. But now, Yuanan didn't know how much Lyn Jinrong had helped her silently behind the scenes. Not only could she not accept Lyn Jinrong's kindness, but she also had no capital to help Lyn Jinrong after divorcing Fu Nanshan. Get out, Lyn Jinrong said in a cold voice. Assistant Sue pursed her lips, knowing that she could not persuade her husband, so she could only apologize and leave the study. When Yuanan arrived at the door of Andy Ann's small shop in Dongjiang Town, and Huanyan, who was wearing a light blue down jacket and a high ponytail, was checking out a customer. On one side of the transparent glass cashier counter was the test paper that Huanyin was working on. She neatly packed the snacks ordered by the customer into a plastic bag, punched in the amount of money on the computer, took the 10 yuan note from the customer, and handed back the change with a smile on her face. Seeing Yuanin standing outside the transparent curtain, Huanyin hurried out from the cashier counter. Not seeing Yuanin's suitcase, she didn't ask much. She pulled Yuanin's cold and lifeless hand and walked into the cashier counter, where there was a small stove with a charcoal fire burning very vigorously. The tall and thin girl picked up the kettle on the small stove, motioned Yuanin to warm herself up by the fire, poured hot water for Yuanin, and handed it to her. And Huanyin watched the show on Friday night and was very worried about Yuanin. However, in Huanyin's heart, her sister is the most powerful. When the host said there was a recording, she felt that there must be a twist, and her sister would definitely expose the Yu family's evildoers. Yuanin took the cup and asked, "Didn't you say you hired someone to help look after the store? Why are you in the store?" And Huanyin has no hearing problems, and I took her to the hospital when she was a child. The doctor said there was nothing wrong with the child's vocal cords, and it was most likely that he suffered psychological trauma in his childhood and was unwilling to speak. But Huanyin was unwilling to receive psychological treatment and was very reluctant to see a psychologist. It was for this reason that Annan insisted on sending Huanyin to a normal school, wanting Huanyin to have more contact with normal children and hoping that she would be able to speak one day. And Huanyin gestured with her hands. Mom asked Aunt Six to watch the store for 100 yuan a day. I have nothing to do on Saturday and Sunday, so I can watch the store. Where's Mom? When mentioning Annan, Yuanin tightly grasped the water cup, and her eyes ached unconsciously. She lowered her eyelids, unable to hold back her tears. And Huanyin seemed to have sensed something. The color drained from her cheeks. She stood there without saying a word, her fists clenched tightly. Huanyin. Yuanin closed her eyes and let out a long breath, then looked up at her. From now on, you will live with your sister. And Huanyin opened her eyes wide, and tears suddenly welled up in her eyes. What happened, Mom? She asked in sign language. Anna was in a car accident and couldn't be saved. Her body is on the way back. Yuanin put down the water cup and took in Huanyin's hand, pulling the little girl into her arms and hugging her tightly, her nose fluttering and tears uncontrollably falling. Huanyin, don't be afraid. And Huanyin lay on Yuanin's legs, tears streaming down her face. She was obviously heartbroken, but no sound came out of her mouth. She grabbed Yuanin's clothes in pain and shook her. She didn't understand why her mother, such a good person, got into a car accident. Mom had such a hard life, and she didn't even wait until she and her sister became successful and had a good life. Her mother hadn't heard her speak, hadn't heard her call her mother. Yuanin hugged Huanyin tightly, closed her eyes, but still couldn't hold back her tears. The next morning, Yuanin took Huanyin to the funeral home to see Annan for the last time. The reason why Aunt Anne's body was transported back from Haicheng was for this reason. And Huanyin, who cried all night and couldn't sleep, looked very haggard and her eyes were so swollen that she couldn't open them. But because she was afraid that Yuanin would worry, and Huanyin kept trying to stay cheerful. It was not until she saw Aunt Anne's body that Huanyin broke down and wanted to rush over to hug Annan, but was stopped by the staff. Unlike the disheveled appearance that Yuanin saw that day, the staff put makeup on Annan, and she was dressed neatly and looked as if she was asleep. Yuanin hugged Huanyin, who could hardly stand. The little girl tried to open her mouth and call out Mom, but no sound came out. And Huanyin was unable to utter a single sound until Aunt Anne was pushed into the crematorium. While sitting on the bench waiting for the ashes, and Huanyin had already wet Yuanin's clothes with tears. She hugged her sister, looking relatively calm, but her red eyes, which were filled with bloodshot, could not hide her sadness. After an unknown amount of waiting, Aunt Anne's ashes were placed in a small urn and handed to Yuanin. Take Annan home, Yuanin said to Huanyin, who was in tears. And Huanyin cried silently and nodded. Annan and Huanyin lived upstairs from the small shop. They placed Aunt Anne's ashes in her portrait, which had been enlarged only yesterday afternoon, and sat at the dining table to discuss what to do next. This semester will end in 2 or 3 weeks. I will take you to Yunqing to study next semester. Yuanin said slowly, you will live with me in the future. And Huanyin nodded. I'll find someone to sell the shop downstairs during the holidays. You can keep this house and put it in your name. After hearing what Yuanin said, and Huanyin quickly waved her hands and used sign language to gesture. This house was bought by my mother before she adopted me. It was left for my sister. I don't want it. You know the Yu family, right? Yu Anan said softly. If the house is under my name, I won't be able to keep it. Anan worked hard for decades to buy this house. Anton said this house is her home, and we can't let it fall into the hands of others. After hearing what Yu Anan said, Huanyan nodded with tears in her eyes. She reached out and touched Huanyan's head. You still have to go to school tomorrow. You didn't sleep last night. Go lie down for a while. I'll go cook and call you when I'm ready. And Huanyan pointed at the pink wound on Yu Anan's head and gestured. You take a rest, I'll do it. Be obedient. Yu Anan gestured to Huanyan to go and rest, then got up, washed her hands, and went to the kitchen to cook. But after a while, Huanyan came to the kitchen and rolled up her sleeves to cut vegetables next to Yu Anan, who was washing vegetables. Without waiting for Yu Anan to chase them away, she gestured. I feel at ease when I'm with my sister. As she gestured, tears began to fall again, and Huanyan quickly wiped them away with the back of her hand. Yu Anan didn't chase anyone away and asked Huanyan to steam the rice. For the two sisters, Yu Anan made scrambled eggs with tomatoes and vegetables and mushrooms. After a few simple bites, Yu Anan cleaned up the kitchen, and Huanyan lay on the dining table in the restaurant to write a test paper, secretly wiping away tears while writing. Chapter 29 Thrills. When Yu Anan came out of the kitchen after mopping the floor, Huanyan was already asleep on the table with tears on her face. She touched Huanyan's head and covered her with a thin blanket, and saw purple marks on the skin exposed from Huanyan's sleeves. Yu Anan frowned, glanced at Huanyan's profile, and carefully pushed up her sleeves a little. Before she could see clearly, Huanyan, who was already sleeping uneasily, twitched. Yu Anan didn't dare to move and planned to wait until she woke up before asking. Yu Anan went downstairs to hang up the transfer sign and then received a call from Assistant Sue. Lawyer Fong asked for $1.3 million in compensation. The other party said that if it is $1.3 million, he will need half a year to pay it off. But if we can accept $1.1 million, he can pay it off all at once. Assistant Sue said, Lawyer Fong personally suggests that if you can accept the compensation amount of $1.1 million, it is better to pay it off all at once to avoid future troubles. After all, it is more reassuring to get the money in your hands. Okay, then I'll trouble you and Lawyer Fong. Fu Nanchun was hospitalized, and the ward was very busy with people coming to visit him from morning till evening. I discovered that ever since Yu Anan woke up, Brother Nanchun has been in constant trouble. Yes, I always go to the hospital. All right, Brother Nanchun, Yu Anan is so popular now. Why don't you try to suppress her? What if Yu Ji is implicated? Yeah, I remember when Yu Anan was pestering Brother Nanchun. It happened that Brother Nanchun and Yu Ji's relationship was almost exposed by paparazzi. Later, the past affairs between Brother Nanchun and Yu Anan were dug out from some corner by netizens. People on the internet were scolding Yu Ji as a mistress and Brother Nanchun as a scumbag. We're already suppressing it. Lei Mingyue said, it's just that the production team of Searching for Family wants to generate attention, so it's not easy to suppress it. It doesn't matter if it's exposed. Isn't the woman who pushed Yu Ji at the airport Yu Anan's adoptive mother? If Yu Ji is really implicated, then we can announce the relationship between Yu Anan and that woman and say that the woman pushed Yu Ji for Yu Anan. Then we'll see whose body is more dirty. Lei Mingyue frowned and disagreed. Fu Nanchun, who was fiddling with his phone to check the trending searches, raised his eyes and spoke in a cold voice. Then let the media hype that I pushed Yu Anan's adoptive mother, causing her death in a car accident. Send me to jail? The ward suddenly became quiet. That's not what I meant. The man who just spoke touched his nose awkwardly. I was just talking nonsense. Okay, Nanchun is tired too. I have to go back to the company to work overtime. Let's go. Lei Mingyue glanced at his watch and said to Fu Nanchun, I'm leaving first. You should take good care of your injuries. After the group of people in the ward left, Fu Nanchun lowered his eyes and stared at the photo on his mobile phone screen where Yu Anan was panicking and covering her body with a quilt. Somehow, he remembered the photo that Aunt An had forced him to see that night. In fact, Fu Nanchun saw it with just a quick glance. It was a summer evening. Yu Anan was wearing a white shirt and jeans and white sneakers. He sat on the stone railings on both sides of the small river in the ancient town, smiling at the camera. His long hair, draped over his shoulders, was ruffled by the evening breeze. He hooked his hand around Yu Anan's shoulders and used the other hand to help Yu Anan lift her hair, his expression serious and gentle. He frowned and swiped his phone screen in annoyance. Everyone on the internet is digging up information about Yu Anan, and Fu Nanchun has already become less popular. Even Do Yuji's agent was trying to pressure her, fearing that the dispute between Do Yuji and Yu Ainin and Fu Nanshan would be exposed again. After all, when Do Yuji was together with Fu Nanshan, she did not get a divorce certificate from Yu Ainin. But it couldn't resist the popularity of the Searching for Family program team. Plus, this episode was really popular, especially the recording that was mentioned at the end of the previous episode, which made it even more popular. However, up to now, no one has linked Yu Ainin to the incident 4 years ago, when Do Yuji was scolded and became a hot topic on the internet. Even if someone did, it was quickly drowned out by other comments. Fu Nanshan thought maybe Lyn Jinrong was suppressed by someone. Once the incident of 4 years ago is brought up, even if Yu Ainin's adoptive mother failed to convince people about the fact that she pushed Do Yuji, Yu Ainin's adoptive mother will be pushed to the forefront again. Yu Ainin and Lyn Jinrong definitely don't want to see this happen. Thinking of Yu Ainin, Fu Nanshan became even more annoyed. When he found out that the medicine Yi Changming gave Yu Ainin was not the truth medicine, he kept wondering, did he have sex with Yu Ainin that night? Have no idea. No impression at all. After an unknown amount of time, Fu Nanshan fell asleep with mixed emotions. The chilly wind of midwinter rushed into the well-heated room through the open window, brushing against the tip of Fu Nanshan's nose and his extremely long eyelashes, as if it had touched a cool, smooth jade. In his sleep, Fu Nanshan's hand under his head moved slightly. In his dream, he was looking at Yu Ainin's profile as she lay sleeping on the test paper. He couldn't help but walk forward to push aside her hair. He restrained his heavy breathing and slowly lowered his head to approach Yu Ainin's face. The faint scent of gardenia in his nostrils made his heart beat violently. He could even see Yu Ainin's long and thick eyelashes. When his nose touched Yu Ainin's delicate and cool nose, his cheeks felt like burning. Staring at her plump pink lips, he tightened his hands on the back of the chair, his Adam's apple rolled up and down, and his eyelashes trembled because of nervousness. Just when Fu Nanshan's thin lips touched Yu Ainin's cold lips, the pair of black and white eyes suddenly opened. In the summer, cicadas are chirping outside the window, and the sound of air from the air conditioner is also heard. Eyes met. Fu Nanshan's brain was in a mess, and his heart was about to jump out of his chest. He stood up suddenly, unable to utter a word, and rushed out the door and ran downstairs. All I could hear was the sound of his intense heartbeat. Bang! The ward window was blown open by the wind and hit the wall with a noise. Fu Nanshan suddenly opened his eyes, and his violent heartbeat continued from the dream to reality. He was breathing heavily, his throat dry and tight, as he stared out the open window. Was it a dream, or did it really happen? Fu Nanshan had no way to lie to himself. The confusion and excitement he felt in his dream were far stronger than ever before. It was a feeling he had never experienced since he lost his memory. Fu Nanshan stood up, pressed his aching head, closed his eyes, and recalled. The moment the pair of black and white eyes in the dream opened, it seemed as if they had hit the softest part of his heart. The cell phone rang, startling Fu Nanshan back to his senses. Seeing that the caller was Do Yuji, Fu Nanshan suppressed the strange and strong throbbing in his heart towards Yu Ainin. After calming down a little, he answered the call. Xiaoguai, is your foot feeling better? You don't have to worry about me. It's normal to sprain your ankle when wearing high heels. It's healed after applying ice last night. What about you? Are you still in pain today? Do Yuji asked with concern. Chapter 30 Benefactor. It hurts. Fu Nanshan smiled and acted like a spoiled child to Do Yuji as usual. It won't hurt if you come to see me. Do Yuji was amused and laughed out loud. Looks like it's all right. I'll come to see you after I finish filming these few days. Since you don't come to see me, I'll make time to visit you. Fu Nanshan's voice was full of tenderness. Do Yuji hesitated for a while before speaking. Brother Nanshan, after I finish filming this drama, if you are still willing to propose to me, we will get married. The car accident of Yu Shiuejie's adoptive mother has shocked me greatly. In fact, I was very scared when I watched the video, afraid that the car hit you. Do Yuji's voice was a little choked up, and her whole body was shaking when she watched the video. Although it was not good for her to think this way about the death of Yu Ainin's adoptive mother, she really felt fortunate that it was not Fu Nanshan who ran into her. Fu Nanshan felt distressed when he heard Do Yuji sobbing. Little cutie, we don't know which will come first, tomorrow or an accident, so Brother Nanshan, I want to cherish the present. Seeing your sister you has chosen to give up, and you have also received a divorce certificate. You are no longer related. I think I can do as you said, put aside my high sense of morality, and cherish every day with you. Do Yuji's words came from the heart. Okay. Fu Nanchen said slowly. I will prepare a grand proposal for you and give you an unforgettable memory. After hanging up the phone, Do Yuji lowered his eyes and stared at the phone screen thoughtfully. When she told Fu Nanchen about her marriage, Fu Nanchen's reaction was beyond Do Yuji's expectations. He thought Fu Nanchen would be very happy, and even couldn't wait to come to her with the ring. Do Yuji forced herself not to think about it and said to her assistant, "Give me the script." The assistant, who was taking off Do Yuji's ancient costume wig, handed her the script. Sister Yuji, you are only 24 years old, and your career is on the rise. If you get married, you will definitely lose a lot of fans. The assistant said cautiously to Do Yuji, who was looking down at the script, and Sister Yao may not agree. Sister Yao is Do Yuji's agent and has been wholeheartedly supporting Do Yuji over the years. I'll talk to Sister Yao. Do Yuji absent-mindedly pretended to take notes on the script with a pen. She didn't know why. Even though Senior Yu and Fu Nanchen had already obtained a divorce certificate and had given up on Fu Nanchen, her sense of crisis became even deeper. Xiaoji, Sister Yao, the agent the assistant just mentioned, walked in with a beaming face. You're amazing. Do Yuji raised her eyes and looked at her agent Sister Yao in the mirror with a puzzled look on her face. Sister Yao casually threw her bag on the dressing table, picked up the water bottle, unscrewed it and drank 2 sips, then leaned against the dressing table and said to Do Yuji, "You don't know how relieved I am today." Today, the second son of Yef came to the company in person to discuss endorsements. I originally thought that Yef came for the movie star Liu Yunfan, but they said that Yef China needed a female spokesperson, and they mentioned your name. Who knew that Ji Ruyun's agent came up to her and promoted Ji Ruyun as if she smelled something? We are from the same company. I didn't expose the shortcomings of her artists, but she talked about your secret relationship with Fu Group's Prince Fu Nanchen. Sister Yao rested her hands on the dressing table, looking at Do Yuji with sparkling eyes, who knew that just after she finished speaking, the second son of the Yef family said directly that he was here to look for Fu Nanchen's girlfriend and hoped that Mr. Fu Nanchen's girlfriend would be the spokesperson for Yef in China. What kind of cool novel is this that has come true? Do Yuji looked surprised. Was he coming for Fu Nanchen? That's not right. The Fu family is indeed the best in Haicheng, but how could a world-class luxury brand like Yef have anything to do with the Fu family? Tell me the truth. When you rescued that person, did you know that he was the second son of the top luxury Yef family? Sister Yao looked gossipy. What? Do Yuji was bewildered. Save people? I don't even know the second son of the Yef family. As soon as he finished speaking, Do Yuji seemed to have thought of something, and his heartbeat suddenly quickened. She had some guesses in her mind, but was reluctant to mention them. So she just said, since you said you were looking for Brother Nanchen's girlfriend, and would you know Brother Nanchen? I'll call and ask Brother Nanchen later. No. Sister Yao frowned. The second son of the Yef family knows that I am your agent, and he asked me to bring you a thank you message. He said that 7 years ago in Italy, you saved him without leaving your name, but before you fainted, you saw your boyfriend pull you up to stop you from giving artificial respiration to save people. You were very angry and called your boyfriend's name. Also, you were wearing the uniform of Shanghai City University, and he didn't know which school uniform you were wearing, so he could only look it up based on the name Fu Nanchen. After searching for so many years, he finally found you. Before leaving, the second son of the Yef family said that if it is convenient in the next few days, he would like to have a meal with you. Do Yuji tightened his grip on the script. 7 years ago, Fu Nanchen was with Senior Yu. If it was in Italy 7 years ago, it should be when Fu Nanchen accompanied Senior Yu to Italy to participate in the competition. Seeing Do Yuji's ugly expression, Sister Yao also had some guesses. She asked softly, did the second son of the Yef family find a wrong benefactor? Could it be Mr. Fu's ex-girlfriend who became a vegetable and woke up again? Do Yuji bit her lip and looked up. Sister Yao, please turn down this endorsement. The second son of Yef family has chosen the wrong person. Rejected? My little Ji, you don't know what being the spokesperson for Yef means, do you? This is your chance to ascend. As long as you become the spokesperson for Yef, you will be promoted directly to the top. Sister Yao leaned over and held Do Yuji's shoulders. Xiaoji, although it is a bit immoral to say this, but anyway, the second son of Yef is looking for Mr. Fu's girlfriend, and you are Mr. Fu's girlfriend. This is a fact, and you are a top student of Haicheng University. It is also a fact. Mr. Fu's ex-girlfriend is not in the entertainment industry. She doesn't need this resource. Sister Yao quickly put down the water to persuade her, fearing that Do Yuji's sense of morality was too high, and directly rejected the endorsement. You become the spokesperson first, and I will arrange your work schedule during this period. The second son of the Yef family has a limited time to stay in the country. Don't let you meet first. After the contract is signed, you can meet the second son of the Yef family and explain that you are not his savior. Do you think this is okay? In Sister Yao's opinion, the important thing is to get the endorsement. She didn't ask Do Yuji to deceive the second son of the Yef family, but just delayed making the truth public. After all, the second son of the Yef family now wishfully believes that Yuji from their family is his savior. Seeing Do Yuji frowning and saying nothing, his expression was struggling. Xiaoji, Sister Yao pinched Do Yuji's shoulders hard. This is a chance to ascend. You really need it. As long as the contract is signed, we will tell the truth. Chapter 31, Going Abroad. In the laboratory, Professor Dong took off his rubber gloves and said, "Next March, I will be invited to attend an exchange meeting for about half a month. I need to bring 2 people with me. In addition to Ko Chun-yin, who will stay to supervise the experiment, you will select 2 people and hand them in after the new year. There is also one more thing I need to tell you." Professor Dong told the students in the laboratory about the death of Yu Ainen's adoptive mother and asked them to take good care of Yu Ainen when she returned. In the afternoon, Ko Chun-yin, Kai Xiaozhu, and Li Weilan all called. Kai Xiaozhu knew that Yu Ainen was going to take her sister to live in Yunqing, so she immediately took the responsibility of finding a school for Huanyin. "My uncle is the principal of Yunqing No. 1 Middle School, which is close to our university. Leave this matter to me." "Don't worry." Kai Xiaozhu hesitated and said, "And don't take what the internet says too seriously. The teacher has already told us about your experience at Haicheng University. Everyone in our laboratory believes that you are not what the Yu family said." After the story of a talented student from Haicheng University taking drugs and having sex with someone became more and more heated online, someone finally uncovered Yu Ainen's identity last night. She matched her with Yu Zhaodi mentioned by Old Lady Yu on the show Searching for Family. Professor Dong was afraid that the students in the laboratory would have some opinions about Yu Ainen, so he made Yu Ainen and Fu Nanshan fall in love. Later, in order to protect Fu Nanshan after a car accident, he became a vegetable and lay in bed for 2 years. After waking up, he told everyone that Fu Nanshan fell in love with someone else and used his own personality to guarantee that Yu Ainen's character was absolutely upright and not as what was said on the internet. Kai Xiaozhu burst into tears at that time, feeling that her junior sister was so pitiful. "Well, thank you, senior sister Kai," Yu Ainen thanked. In the evening, Professor Dong sent a message in the laboratory group saying that although Yunqing University had already gone on holiday, everyone chose to stay in school due to the urgency of the experiment. He specially applied for a sum of money to give bonuses to everyone, and the group suddenly became lively. Ko Chun-yin took the opportunity to tell Yu Ainen that everyone had collected some money as a gift for Yu Ainen and was afraid that Yu Ainen would not accept it. So he asked everyone to send a message in the group. The messages in the group kept scrolling up one by one. Yu Ainen thanked everyone, accepted their kindness, and replied to the message. Seeing Yu Ainen's relaxed tone in replying to the message, Kai Xiaozhu couldn't help but send one. "Kai Xiaozhu, and I'm a little curious. What recording did you send to the program team?" "Blue Sky." "Kai Xiaozhu, are you out of your mind? Can you just give spoilers before the show airs?" "And then, it's the recording of the phone call between the Yu family and me." "Blue Sky." "And then, ignore her. She insisted on asking about something we knew on Friday. You should take care of your family affairs these days. You don't have to reply to the group messages. We will wait for you to come back." "Handsome Ku, I have asked around, and then you live in a single dormitory, and your situation is special, so it's no problem for your sister to come and live with you." Little dimples. "I was wondering why senior brother didn't say anything for so long. He did a great job. Applause. Senior brother is awesome. Blue Sky. Big brother is mighty +1. And thank you, senior brother." Seeing her seniors in the laboratory eager to help her solve the problem, she couldn't help but feel tears in her eyes. Yu Ainen has been staying in Dongjiang Town this week. Aunt Anne's shop was sold on Wednesday, and Yu Ainen went to the bank on Thursday and deposited all the money into Huanyin's account. She had just come back from the supermarket after buying groceries and saw Huanyin's shoes at the door. Her shoes were wet, but it wasn't raining outside. Yu Ainen put the key on the shoe cabinet and looked at the watch. It was only 4:25. It was not yet time for school to end. She changed her shoes, put the dishes in the kitchen, walked to Huanyin's door, knocked and asked, "Huanyin, why are you back so early today?" "Knock, knock, knock." This means to ask Yu Ainen to wait a moment. Yu Ainen lowered her eyes and looked at the water stains left by the slippers on the floor all the way to the bathroom. She frowned and thought of the bruise on Hwanyan's wrist that day. A suffocating thought emerged in Yuanen's mind. School bullying. Yuanen stood at the door of Hwanyan's room, pursed her lips tightly, her mind in a mess. Finally, she went back to the kitchen to prepare dinner. And Hwanyan changed her clothes, dried her hair, and ran to the kitchen. Seeing Yuanen washing vegetables, she stepped forward to help and gestured that she had fallen while carrying water while cleaning today and her clothes were wet. The teacher let her go back first. Seeing that the little girl's eyes were clear and bright, and she didn't look gloomy, Yuanen felt relieved and started cutting vegetables. I've asked for leave for you tomorrow. We're going to Yunqing. You'll be transferring to Yunqing number 1 middle school next semester. You'll need to have an interview tomorrow. If you pass the interview, you'll need to do a few test questions before you're assigned to a class. But with your grades, you'll have no problem getting into the top class. Because Hwanyan's situation was special and she couldn't speak, but her hearing and other aspects were fine. Even if she was admitted through Kai Xiaoju's relationship, Yunqing number 1 middle school would still have to interview Hwanyan to see her specific situation. And Hwanyan nodded and gestured with her hands to reassure Yuanen. Seeing the expectant look in Hwanyan's eyes, Yuanen smiled and touched foreheads with Hwanyan. She will definitely take good care of Hwanyan and not let Annan worry. On Friday, Hwanyan went to Yunqing number 1 middle school for an interview. While Yuanen was waiting for Hwanyan at the milk tea shop opposite the school, she called to book a private room in the restaurant, intending to invite her seniors from the laboratory to have dinner together in the afternoon. As soon as she sent the message to the group, a middle-aged man in a suit stood in front of her, handed her a business card with both hands, and said with a smile, "Hello, miss you. Our chairman wants to meet you." The name on the business card is Lyn Jinrong, who is Yuanen's biological grandfather. She was startled, looked up at the man in front of her with a warm smile, and asked, "Who are you?" "I'm the chairman's special assistant. My last name is Zhou." Assistant Zhou turned sideways and made a gesture of invitation to Yuanen. "Please." The only time she remembered seeing Lyn Jinrong was when Lyn Jinrong hugged her biological mother into the car and left. At that time, the old man didn't even look at her. Seeing her suddenly at this time, could it be because the incident on the Searching for Family program affected her biological mother? Full of doubts and worries, Yuanen followed Assistant Zhou to the car parked on the side of the road. Assistant Zhou opened the back door, and Lyn Jinrong sat in the back seat. The old man, wearing a gray woolen coat and neatly combed hair, crossed his legs and wore a pair of glasses. He exuded a gentlemanly temperament, but the aura of a senior who had been in the business world for many years was still very intimidating. Yuanen held her bag tightly and bent over to sit in the car. The driver and Assistant Zhou were waiting under the car, leaving the private space for Yuanen and Lyn Jinrong. Yuanen didn't know what to call Lyn Jinrong, so she said stiffly, "Hello." Lyn Jinrong didn't even look at her. His features were grim. "Have you ever considered going abroad?" Lyn Jinrong said in a cold voice. Chapter 32, Admit Mistake. Yuanen's palms tightened. "I haven't considered it yet. Now that the rumors on the internet have become so rampant, your current reputation has already affected Jinrong in the circle." Lyn Jinrong frowned. "Do you want our Lyn family to be dragged into this in the end?" "I haven't thought about it that way. In order to protect my daughter, we have always said that you are a relative of Jinrong's original family, but you are just a relative." Lyn Jinrong finally turned his head and looked at Yuanen with a sharp look in his eyes. "Jinrong's excessive help to you will also arouse suspicion, so I hope you will not trouble Jinrong again in the future, and do not contact anyone related to the Lyn family." Yuanen opened her mouth to explain, but the words came to her lips and she responded, "Okay, I understand. Don't worry, I won't do it again in the future." Although it was Lyn Jinrong who had always taken the initiative to help her, she did accept it, and this was irrefutable. In fact, even if Mr. Lyn didn't come to see her today, she didn't have the face to see Lyn Jinrong again after what happened between her and Lyn Jinrong that night. Seeing that Yuanen understood the situation, Lyn Jinrong didn't say anything more. It didn't matter if Yuanen didn't want to go abroad. He canceled the marriage with the Su family on the condition that Lyn Jinrong would go abroad to help the group solve the chip cooperation rights. In a short period of time, the company's business alone could trap Lyn Jinrong abroad, leaving him no time to pay attention to Yuanen. The password is 6 zeros. He took out a card from his pocket and handed it to Yuanen and continued, "I will handle the online issues for you and calm down the heat." "Mr. Lyn." Yuanen gently interrupted Lyn Jinrong. "I will handle the online issues myself. After the show airs tonight, the rumors will die down, and I promise that the Lyn family will not be implicated." Her eyes fell on the card and she pushed it back. I won't accept this money. The Lynn family has helped me a lot over the years. I am grateful. I hope you and your family are healthy and safe. Goodbye. Facing her blood-related grandfather, Yuanin gave herself the most sincere blessings. She pushed open the car door, stood beside the car, and bowed to Lyn Jinrong, then closed the door and watched the black sedan carrying Lyn Jinrong leave. In the car, Assistant Joe, who was sitting in the passenger seat, looked through the rearview mirror at Yuanin standing on the side of the road and watching the car. He said to Lyn Jinrong in the back seat, "Chairman, are we really not going to suppress the online popularity? Miss Yu is now being blacklisted by the entire internet and is being scolded." Assistant Joe has followed Lyn Jinrong for decades and is very familiar with Yuanin's background. Since she doesn't appreciate it, let her handle it herself and let others pay attention to it. As long as it doesn't involve Jinrong and the Lyn family, don't worry about it. Lyn Jinrong closed his eyes. Although his voice was cold, his eyes were filled with complex emotions. Yuanin's young face looks very similar to Jinhua. It's just that their personalities and eyes are not similar at all. He had a daughter in his old age and had always doted on Jinhua, protecting her too well, causing her to develop a kind and innocent character that was ignorant of the ways of the world. This was how the child was easily deceived. But Yuanin's eyes were gentle and tough, very familiar, like my wife in her youth. If Yuanin was the child born after a normal marriage and 10 months of pregnancy to his daughter, Lyn Jinrong would definitely like her very much and would even cultivate her like he cultivated Lyn Jinrong. But Yuanin was the daughter of the person who insulted, abused, and hurt his beloved, and Lyn Jinrong asked himself if he had the grace to tolerate Yuanin. Lyn Jinrong looked out the window. As long as it doesn't involve his precious daughter, Yuanin can live her life however she wants. As soon as they arrived at the restaurant at 7:30, Kai Xiaozhu heard that they were in the private room and turned to ask, "Why don't we sit in the lobby? We'll be watching the second half of Searching for Relatives tonight." Li Weilon hurriedly pulled Kai Xiaozhu and pointed to Huanyan, the fair-skinned and well-behaved girl next to Yuanin. The little girl's pair of distinct black and white eyes looked as clean and innocent as if they had been washed with water. Kai Xiaozhu immediately realized that Yuanin and the little girl's deceased adoptive mother were the guests. Li Weilon was afraid that the little girl would feel sad when she saw them. The heartless Kai Xiaozhu smiled apologetically at Yuanin, cleared his throat, and asked, "Which box is it?" And Huanyan tugged at Yuanin's hand and gestured, "Sister, I want to watch it." "Mom is in the show." The little girl smiled, but her eyes were red. Yuanin smiled and patted in Huanyan's little head. "If there are seats in the lobby, please sit there. Huanyan wants to watch it too." And Huanyan nodded to the older brothers and sisters in front of her. When the Searching for Family program was broadcast on time in the evening, their food had not yet been served. In the restaurant lobby, guests who were eating and waiting for their food were all looking at the TV screen. After a week of fermentation, the popularity of this program is extremely high. As soon as the show started at 8 o'clock, the ratings soared, and the number of views on the 3 major online platforms was also astonishing. At the beginning of the show, the host Tang Yan said in the front, "Welcome back, audience," while the Yu family members were still cursing in the back. Anton, who was standing at the back with only half of her body in the camera, was so angry that her chest heaved and her face looked ugly. And Huanyan stared at her mother with moist eyes, not wanting to blink. "Soon we will get to the point. The recording will start playing." "Yuanin, you shameless bitch, aren't you very good at hiding? How do you know that we are afraid of being on the show? You are so shameless. I think highly of you by letting you return to Yujia village to be Sun Keizi's wife." The triumphant and cursing voices of Yu Baodong, Old Lady Yu, Aunt Yu, and Yu Jiawang echoed in the studio. This recording vividly reveals the Yu family's calculations and viciousness. The restaurant lobby was in an uproar. "What the hell? My 3 views have been blown away." Kai Xiaozhu couldn't help but swear. The guests sitting at the table behind were also shocked. After being trafficked, she gave birth to 8 children and is pregnant with 9. Oh my God! She was still a minor when she was trafficked. What a devilish family this is. They killed someone's daughter and are still eyeing their property. On the TV screen, Annin, who had been watching the Yu family's performance for a long time, was filled with anger. Tang Yan stood up at this time and looked towards the side of the stage. "Although our program team did not invite Baodong's grandfather, we have invited Baodong's sister to the scene. We would like to invite you, Baodong's sister, Miss Yu." Obviously, neither the Yu family nor Aunt and expected Yuanin to be on the show. The camera gave a close-up of Annin and the Yu family's expressions. Annin turned her head to look at Yuanin, her eyes full of surprise and worry, and she stood up and called her, Ainin. Upon seeing this, old lady Yu stood up and pointed at Yuanin while crying and cursing. You Zhaodi, how dare you come here? Why don't you just die? You have brought shame to all of us in the Yu family. Mom, don't be angry first. Yu Baodong's aunt quickly supported Mrs. Yu and scolded Yu Ainin in an imperative tone. You Zhaodi, look at what you did. Not only did you fool around with men, but the photos of you fooling around were posted everywhere. You're gonna piss off your grandma and your dad to death. Why don't you kneel down and admit your mistake to your grandma? Chapter 33 Horrible. Before the show, the Yu family had discussed that they must reveal Yu Ainin's name and school on the show, fabricate obscene rumors about her, make everyone despise her, and force her to leave Haicheng. Only then will she obediently follow them back to Yujia village. How easy it is to ruin a girl. All it takes is spreading obscene rumors. The slanderer only needs one sentence, and the slandered person may not be able to prove himself even if he spends all his time and energy. Even if the truth comes out, the slanderer can just say sorry, and everything will be over. Not to mention, Yu Ainin was really photographed by Fu Nanshin. Old Mrs. Yu sat on the ground, slapped her legs, and cried loudly. Zhao Di was a good girl when she left our house, but what has she become of her? A good student of Haicheng University has become a shameless and cheap thing. She sells things at school, and her photos of sleeping with men are posted everywhere. We went to Haicheng University to look for her, and as soon as we entered, we heard that Yuanin had slept with all the men in Haicheng University. How shameless. The Yu family has lost all face. My life is so miserable. How could the Yu family produce such a thing that brings disgrace to the family? Yu, how can a grandmother slander her granddaughter with such vicious words? Anin was so angry that her face turned pale. You are so shameless. You stinky bitch. I'm going to beat you to death. Yu Zhuang's eyes were bloodshot, and he was about to rush towards Yu Ainin by stepping on the coffee table. The quick-eyed and quick-handed security guard on the scene quickly pinned the man down. Yu Baodong was a smart man and immediately realized that something was wrong. Without saying a word, he knelt down in front of Yu Ainin. Sister, since Mom is gone, please let me see Grandpa. Grandpa only has Mom as his daughter, and Mom is gone. You and I are both Mom's children, and we should be filial to Grandpa on behalf of Mom. I promise not to tell Grandpa about your college life. There was chaos on the stage, and the camera swept across the audience, which was completely silent. Yu Ainin took the microphone from Tang Yan with a calm expression. Her calm demeanor was in stark contrast to the chaotic screams on the stage. Kai Xiaozhu felt distressed when she saw her junior sister Yu on the screen with a bandage wound on her head while she was on the show. She turned her head and looked at Yuanin. And you actually went to record the show by yourself? How much courage does this take? Kai Xiaozhu felt distressed when she thought about the internet attacks on Yu Ainin that had been going on for some time. Yu Ainin has revealed her face, and I don't know how many people will use her nude photos to make trouble. I have reasons why I have to go. Yu Ainin smiled and comforted senior sister Kai. The recording that Yu Ainin submitted was released, and it became a hot search term in succession. Hashtag the recording exploded. The search for mother was fake, and the desire for grandfather's property was real. Hashtag taking 30,000 yuan as a betrothal gift and spreading rumors to force an abandoned adult girl to marry a cripple. Hashtag. The ratings of Searching for Family are rising steadily. It was not until the recording was finished and Yu Ainin was invited to the stage by the host Tang Yan that the ratings exploded. On the TV screen, Yu Ainin bowed to the audience, then held the microphone and spoke slowly. Just now backstage, I heard the Yu family narrate the whole process. Old Mrs. Yu said that she treated the so-called daughter-in-law she bought for 30,000 yuan very well. She was the one who fed my biological mother when she was not feeling well. But she didn't say that the time when my biological mother was not feeling well was when she was beaten half to death by Yu Zhuang and could not eat on her own. You're talking nonsense. Mom is so precious at home that she never works in the fields, and Dad has never touched Mom. Yu Baodong shouted excitedly. Sister, you can't be so heartless as to slander Dad. As soon as Yu Baodong finished speaking, the injury report issued by the hospital when the Lin family held Yu Zhuang accountable appeared on the big screen, along with photos of the injuries without showing his face. It can be said that the scars of different sizes are intertwined, and it is horrible to look at. This is the injury report that Mr. Lin asked the hospital to issue when my biological mother escaped from Yujia village, but before she died. Yu Ainin drew red lines on the key parts of the injury report. The body has large and small injuries, new and old, visible to the naked eye. There are 28 fractures, and the skull also has a small piece missing due to trauma. This is the photo taken by the police of the place where my biological mother was imprisoned by the Yu family before her death. Yuanin looked again at the big screen with changed photos. The moldy and damp basement on the big screen was filmed when the police opened the case. There was only a blood-stained bed inside, and the iron chains and walls were covered with bloody marks from Yuanin's biological mother's scratches, which was shocking. My biological mother was abducted to Yujia village when she was 16 and gave birth to me when she was 17. During this period, she was repeatedly forced to get pregnant and give birth. Every time my biological mother gave birth to a girl, the midwife in Yujia village would throw the baby to death or scald it with boiling water in front of my biological mother and me, without exception. My biological mother became mentally ill because of this. According to the identity arranged by the Lyn family for Yuanin's biological mother, she was indeed abducted at the age of 16. But in fact, Yuanin's biological mother Lyn Jinrong was abducted at the age of 15 and gave birth to her first child, Yuanin, before she was 16. My biological mother has been in a dark hell for more than 10 years and was not free until her life ended. Yuanin tightly grasped the microphone. Everyone in the Yu family is an evil ghost torturing my biological mother in hell, including me and Yu Baodong, because he and I are evidence of the Yu family's persecution of my biological mother. The evidence itself is innocent, but evidence is evidence. If you still have the most basic conscience as a human being, you should not bother the victim's father, Mr. Lynn, for the rest of your life, no matter what the reason, unless the so-called search for relatives itself has other purposes, such as coveting Mr. Lynn's property. Watching Yuanin calmly narrating the past on the phone screen, Kai Xiaozhu turned around and looked at Yuanin in disbelief as she was using a serving chopstick to serve cooked vegetables to their bowls. Before the program was recorded today, host Hang suggested that I hand over the recording of the call to the program team and not show up to avoid causing trouble to my future life. But I know that even if I don't show up today, the Yu family will make up obscene rumors and spread my information after the program is broadcast, using public opinion to force me to stop going to school and marry son Casey to exchange for Yu Baodong's betrothal gift. Since I can't avoid it, I choose to face it head on. Yuanin spoke clearly. I have lived in Yujia village for 10 years. When I was growing up, I saw 36 women who were trafficked here. 9 of them were beaten to death for escaping, 5 were driven crazy, for committed suicide, 7 died of childbirth difficulties, and the rest either accepted their fate and integrated into the village, or were like my biological mother, unable to live or die. Without exception, they were all subjected to inhuman torture, and abuse and beatings were commonplace. As far as I can remember, every time my mother gave birth, I was taken to the basement where she was imprisoned and was beaten and abused. The Yu family believed that any girl who was born into the Yu family would not dare to be reborn after seeing the miserable state of the Yu family's daughter. All the big and small burns on my body were caused by that time. Chapter 34. Loving her mother. Yuanin unzipped her down jacket, revealing her skinny body in a vest. As a girl, the only reason I can survive is to scare the girls who come to reincarnate. No one could imagine that Yuanin had such a beautiful face, but so many hideous and ugly scars on her body. Until this point, all the keyboard warriors who had seen Yuanin's naked photos and mocked her for being a masochist and a playboy in bed have remained silent. The photo on the big screen switched again, showing a little girl with a dirty face, dry and yellow hair, and a thin body. Her body was covered with wounds that were unbearable to look at, but her eyes were very bright. The scars on Yuanin's body and the fresh bloody scars on the little girl in the photo give people a great visual impact. This is me, who just escaped from Yujia village with my biological mother. Yuanin glanced at the screen and said calmly, "At that time, because my biological mother gave birth to girls one after another, the Yu family started to nail steel needles into my body during my mother's last pregnancy. When I escaped, there were already 29 steel needles in my body. The Yu family believed that only in this way could they deter female fetuses from being born into the Yu family." Every word Yuanin said made the audience tremble with fear, but she pulled her down jacket tightly with great calmness. What's funny is that legally, Yu Zhuang, the buyer of human trafficking and the abuser of trafficked women, is safe and sound. Yu Zhuang was in jail because he personally threw 6 newborn girls to death, but he was released after only 7 years in prison. Today, more than a decade later, in human trafficking, the maximum sentence for the buyer is only 3 years. For the sale of first-class protected animals, both the buyer and the seller are sentenced together, starting at 10 years and up to life imprisonment. Even for the sale of parrots, both the buyer and the seller are sentenced together. And in human trafficking, buying and trafficking are such typical joint crimes. Why can the buyer, who is the most persistent abuser, be let off easily? Yuanan said in a loud voice. Because many places in our country have the custom of buying and selling people since ancient times. I hope that through today's program, more people will pay attention to the unreasonableness of the human trafficking law. Yuanan's eyes were calm, and she finally said what she wanted to say most today. To really combat human trafficking, we must first curb the buyers. It is because the penalties for buyers are too light that there is a seller's market. Only by increasing the sentencing of buyers to a level that makes them afraid can human trafficking be reduced. Without demand, and without the courage to have demand, there will be no market. Well said. Kai Xiaozhu stood up with tears in her eyes and clapped her hands vigorously. She turned her head to look at Yuanan, who was smiling. She had never realized that her junior sister had such a stable and strong spiritual core. So, this is the reason she said she had to be on the show. Inside the restaurant, the guests who had been following the show also applauded. Li Weilon also smiled with tears in her eyes and rubbed in Huanyan's head, then pinched Yuanan's shoulders. The camera swept across the audience, who were all in tears and applauding loudly. Yuanan just lowered her head and smiled at Huanyan, who was holding her hand tightly. And Huanyan knew everything about her sister's experience. She had tears in her big, beautiful eyes, but she knew her sister had always been brave and strong. If she could be as brave and strong as her sister, her mother in heaven would be relieved. And Huanyan wiped away her tears with the back of her hand, hugged Yuanan's arm tightly, watched the last image of her mother on the TV screen, and secretly made up her mind to live a good life and not let her mother worry. The duration of the program, Searching for Relatives, has not yet ended. Finally, I want to say something to the children of abductees like me. Yuanan's eyes were red, but her voice was powerful. If your mothers are lucky enough to be alive and have escaped from hell, please don't actively drag them back to the memories of hell. During the 2 years she was in a deep sleep after the car accident, she was in a dream. In her dreams, she wanted to go back to the past countless times, to save her mother, to take her mother away from Yujia village, even if it would mean she would no longer exist. Because she really loves her mother. Although my mother has passed away, I really want to tell her that I am living a good life now. Although she is not by my side, I have Annan, who takes good care of me and gives me the same maternal love as my biological mother. I am very satisfied. If she is still alive in heaven, I really hope she can forget me. If she can forget me, it means she can forget everything in hell and only remember the good things in the world. This is what she wanted to say to her biological mother. Yuanan bowed again, raised her hand to wipe away her tears, and handed the microphone back to the staff. You Zhaodi, you black-hearted bitch. If I had known you would be born, I should have thrown you to death. Old Mrs. Yu rushed towards Yuanan with a vicious look on her face, but was stopped by the staff. The host Hang Yan looked gloomy and held the microphone. He stood in front of the camera and said, "No demand, no harm. I admire Miss Yu's courage. Today, after I got all the information and knew the whole story, I went to the dressing room to meet Miss Yu. Miss Yu told me she chose to stand on this stage today because her power was too limited. She hoped to use this program to make more people pay attention to the unreasonable sentencing of human trafficking. If the sentencing can be changed, then it will definitely greatly reduce the occurrence of human trafficking." The Yu family members who were stopped by the staff were still struggling and trying to fight, and obscene noises continued. Tang Yan stood in the center of the screen, still making his presentation for this episode. All the senior brothers and sisters turned their heads to look at the sisters Yuanan and Huanyan. Kai Xiaozhu has always been sentimental, and now she can't hold back her tears. Junior sister, Sister Kai hadn't even finished saying, "I didn't expect you had such a miserable experience." Ko Chingyan covered her mouth with his hand and picked up some meat for Yuanan and Huanyan. "You two sisters, eat more? Look how thin you are." "That's right, you're too thin. This is delicious." And then, "Huanyan, come here. Eat more meat so you can grow fat." The seniors picked up their chopsticks and started picking up food for Yuanan and Huanyan. "Thank you." Yuanan smiled. When Yuanan and Huanyan returned to the dormitory and took a shower, this episode almost dominated the hot searches on Weibo. Hashtag the reality of trafficking is more terrifying than the movie's hashtag. Hashtag the devil on earth was kidnapped at the age of 16, got pregnant 9 times in 11 years, gave birth to 7 girls and 6 baby girls, and was thrown to death. Hashtag. Hashtag Uja village favors boys over girls. Baby girl falls to death. Missing women rely on trafficking to continue evil offspring. Hashtag. Hashtag sentencing of the buyer of trafficking. Hashtag. Hashtag human trafficking buyers should be sentenced to higher penalties. No demand, no harm. Hashtag. And Huanyan held the phone in front of Yuanin and let her see it. Chapter 35 Patience. Seeing that the topic was so popular, Yuanin's eyes became moist. She participated in the program Searching for Family in order to use the influence of the program to increase the sentencing of buyers in human trafficking. At the same time, videos of Yuanin's speeches after each award she received in recent years, in which she always asked everyone to pay attention to human trafficking, were dug up on the internet. Some people also found out that Yuanin has donated every prize money she won to the fund for finding abducted people since junior high school. This also proves that Yuanin was not just putting on a show on the show. At Xiaolongbao. Jinghao, Jiao Jiao Mudger at Surxing Jinghao. This is probably because your own mother has been caught in the rain, so no matter how difficult it is, you still want to hold an umbrella for others. Awawashai. Jinghao human trafficking buyers should be sentenced to higher penalties. No demand, no harm. Hashtag I cried my heart out. These sisters have really been campaigning for attention to human trafficking since they were young. At Chu Sung No Dua Jopako. Jinghao, Jiaofan Maja, Jiaoxing Jinghao, the young lady worked so hard. Maybe she wanted to save her mother. She insisted on calling for attention to human trafficking. And perhaps she thought countless times that if the buyer's sentence could be increased before her mother was abducted, maybe her mother would not have been abducted. The family members were in tears. At Yunwudrlan. Jinghao human trafficking buyers should be sentenced higher. No demand. No harm. Hashtag when you forward this, please include the topic so that we can push the topic to the top and let more people see it. At Chengza Manfei Yofei 1000. Hashtag human trafficking buyers should be sentenced higher. No demand. No harm. Hashtag oh my god, the first gold medal in the International Olympic Games. The acceptance speech was to call for attention to human trafficking. What kind of beauty, strong and miserable is this girl? The Yu family also received a lot of criticism. At Wupinger. Jinghao the recording exploded. The search for the mother was fake, but the desire for the grandfather's property was real. Hashtag fuck. This family's abacus beads are about to fall on my face. They killed someone's daughter and are still eyeing someone's property. How can there be such a beast? At Ni Xinjingbinga. Jinghao taking 30,000 yuan as a betrothal gift and spreading rumors to force an abandoned adult girl to marry a cripple. Hashtag the internet is so developed now that I can get so angry that I have 10 more nodules in my breast without leaving my house. What kind of monsters are there in Yujia village? If anyone else attacks Yuanin by bringing up the photo of her drugging and having sex at Haicheng University, the scolding will soon be drowned out by the netizens who were so angry at the Yu family that they had a heart attack. At Xiao Jiao Jiao Yodarai. Jinghao Jiaodi Sheng Xiao Pachang Jinghao, I don't believe a young lady like this would do something like this. The man has already apologized. Why do so many people still not believe it and have to turn it into a conspiracy? Why is it that every time there are dirty rumors or such things, the girls are the ones who get hurt? And Huanyan hugged Yuanin, and seeing Yuanin's tears, she stretched out her hand to gesture. My mother and my sister's biological mother would be proud of my sister if she saw how she used this program to draw so many people's attention to human trafficking. Yuanin nodded. Yeah, Lyn family. In the early morning, Lyn Jigua, sitting on the sofa in the study and watching a program on his tablet, stared at Yuanin, who called for an increase in the sentencing of buyers in human trafficking, with his lips tightly pursed. He turned the volume of the tablet very low, but he could clearly hear every word Yuanin said. After a long time, Lyn Jigua took off his glasses and pressed his eyes with his fingers. Although Lyn Jigua was reluctant to admit it, he understood that this was the reason why Yuanin needed the popularity of this show to be hyped up. This child wants to save more Jinhwas. No wonder Jinrong said Yuanin was smart. In order to achieve your goals, you must be able to endure insults and be patient. This shows that Yuanin has an extremely stable emotional core, just like a member of the Lyn family. Ding, ding, ding. Hearing the knock on the door, Lyn Jigua locked the tablet screen and put on his glasses. What's the matter? Sir, it's too late. You should rest. Aunt Sue pushed the study door open a crack and reminded quietly. Tomorrow morning, Dr. He will come to check on you and Jinhua. Okay, I understand. Lyn Ji would turn his head and told Su Ma. Go to bed. Another person who is also sleepless tonight is Fu Nanshan. Fu Nanshan has been discharged from the hospital and returned to the Fu family to recuperate. He knew that the next episode of Searching for Family would be broadcast tonight, and he also knew that Yuana was going to participate in the show. Today, during the show's broadcast time, he was video chatting with Do Yuji and helping her memorize the script. Even after Do Yuji turned off the lights and went to rest, Fu Nanshan couldn't help but click on the video. Fu Nanshan indeed did not expect that Yuanan would say such words after she appeared in the second episode. He saw on the trending searches and comments that all the videos of Yuanan's award-winning speeches during her school years were dug out. In the video, the young face with a high ponytail that appeared in his dream was full of vitality, calling for attention to human trafficking and calling for increased sentencing for buyers. Whether it was a speech in English or in Chinese, it was so powerful. Yuanan was so dazzling on the podium, and her whole voice was sonorous and firm. Fu Nanshan finally realized why Yuanan reacted so strongly when he said that day that Yuanan was the son of a rapist and called her Yu Zhaodi. Because this is a trauma in her heart that will never heal in her lifetime. Her biological mother was abducted and died as a result of the abduction. That's why she has been working for so many years to increase the sentencing for buyers of human trafficking. On the screen, Yuanan, with red eyes, clutched the microphone and continued, "Although my mother has passed away, I really want to tell her that I am living a good life now. Although she is not by my side, I have Annan, who takes good care of me and gives me the same maternal love as my biological mother." Fu Nanshan unconsciously retracted his feet that were resting on the coffee table and stared at the screen. Gave her the same love as her biological mother? He thought of the slap Yuanan gave him at the morgue door that day, causing tinnitus in his ears. So, does he indirectly kill Yuanan's other mother? The portion for a mother and the portion for an aunt are definitely different. Fu Nanshan fumbled with his phone with his fingers, feeling upset. The original anger caused by Yuanan's slap and Yuanan's pushing of Do Yuji also disappeared. He lit a cigarette, stood up, and walked to the French window, staring at the 2-meter-tall gardenia tree on the right side of the cobblestone path with floor lamps in the yard. The faint scent of gardenia in his memory seemed to linger around his nose. The scene of him stealing a kiss from Yuanan and being pressed against the school wall by Yuanan in the afternoon also appeared uncontrollably in his mind. Along with it comes that panic-inducing feeling of palpitations. He bit the cigarette but impatiently, leaned lazily against the wall, took out his cell phone, and opened it. His finger moved to Yuanan's phone number, but when he thought of Yuanan's cold voice and eyes at the Civil Affairs Bureau, he locked the phone screen. Chapter 36 Proposal. As far as he could remember, he had never apologized to anyone. Even if Yuanan answered the phone, what should he say? Lyn Jinrong, who had already boarded the private plane with the core members of the Lynn family, looked through the program clips and the hot searches on the internet. Seeing that the wind was finally moving in a good direction, she felt relieved, handed the tablet to Assistant Sue, and glanced at her watch. It was time for a brief meeting with the company's key personnel. He picked up the documents and walked to the back, instructing Assistant Sue, "Have someone keep an eye on the online trend and be ready to control comments at any time." "Don't worry, I've already asked the Secretariat to keep an eye on it before I leave." Assistant Sue followed behind Lyn Jinrong. The Secretariat will send out the video of Miss and Anne's award-winning speech in different time periods. Thanks for the video. There are many matches that are not shown in the media. However, Assistant Sue would always send someone to follow and film the whole process for Lyn Jinrong to see. Over time, Assistant Sue saved videos of every game that Yuanan played. Assistant Sue felt that Lyn Jinrong's concern for Yuanan had already surpassed the care that relatives showed to an orphan girl. As the person who has followed Lyn Jinrong the longest, Assistant Sue knows that Lyn Jinrong is not the kind of person who is full of sympathy. He even had an absurd illusion that Lyn Jinrong's concern for Yuanan was more like a man's concern for a woman. And he is the type who has a secret crush on her but dares not say it out loud. So he chooses to protect her silently and help her secretly. If Yuanan and Lyn Jinrong were not related by blood, Assistant Sue would have asked this question a long time ago. On Saturday, Yuanan took in Huanyin on a tour of the Yunqing Museum and several scenic spots. The seniors also warmly invited in Huanyin to go to the laboratory to play for a while, under the pretext of cultivating in Huanyin's love for biology, so that they would have one more member in the biology army in the future. Before Yuanan and Huanyin returned to Dongjiang Town on Sunday afternoon, Kai Xiaozhu brought the news that Huanyin could transfer to Yunqing No. 1 Middle School next semester. and Huanyan's test scores are excellent, so there is no problem for her to be admitted to the top class, but considering in Huanyan's special situation, she will be arranged to be in the ordinary class when she comes. According to the situation of Yinqing No. 1 Middle School, the classes will be rearranged based on the results after the midterm exam, and in Huanyan will be reassigned to a class based on her results. Yu Ainen originally wanted to discuss with Professor Dong that she would stay at home within Huanyan for the next period of time, and then take in Huanyan to Yunqing when the next semester starts. But all the experimental data on Yu Ainen's hands are not allowed to be taken out of the laboratory, which makes things a bit difficult. And Huanyan, who had just finished taking a shower and hadn't blow-dried her hair yet, pulled Yu Ainen to sit on the bed and gestured. I went to your lab, and it was quite busy. Sister Anshin was busy with experiments in the lab. I can go to school and cook by myself. When Mom wasn't around, I took care of myself. Seeing Yu Ainen's frown, and Huanyan gestured again. Didn't Professor Dong say that the laboratory will be closed on the 28th of the year? In half a month, my sister will be back for the new year. During this period, I will call and text my sister every day. Don't worry about me. I am very independent. The little girl smiled. She never doubted in Huanyan's ability to be independent in life. Unable to resist the girl's persuasion and worried about the laboratory, Yu Ainen took some things and went to visit Mrs. who lived alone next door. She gave 1,000 yuan to Grandma who, hoping that Grandma who would help take care of in Huanyan in the next half month. Grandma who agreed immediately and refused to accept the money. Huanyan is a good and obedient child. She helps me carry things upstairs when we meet. She also came to help me clean the house during the new year. It is my duty to take care of Huanyan. I won't charge her money. It's a matter of having more people and more pairs of chopsticks for dinner. It's more lively to have someone accompany an old lady like me for dinner. Grandma Hu, I know you are a kind-hearted person. This is my gift to you. And Huanyan put the money into Grandma Hu's hand. Please accept it. Grandma Hu had no choice but to accept the money. On Tuesday morning, before leaving for the airport, Yu Ainen repeatedly reminded in Huanyan, call me every day. Check the gas and door locks before going out and before going to bed. And Huanyan, who was carrying a school bag, nodded obediently and opened the taxi door for Yu Ainen. I'm leaving. If you have anything, ask Grandma who to call me. And Huanyan gestured with a smile. Don't worry. As soon as the plane landed, Yu Ainen received a text message from Huanyan. She patiently reminded in Huanyan to be safe and eat well before taking the airport bus back to Yunqing University. As soon as she arrived at school, Yu Ainen went to the laboratory to start organizing and checking the data without even returning to the dormitory. Kai Xiaozhu came back with a glass of water and saw Yu Ainen staring at the data on the screen with a frown and asked, What's wrong? I feel that the data from the computer doesn't match the data from the 3 actual operations in the past 3 years of our experiment. Yu Ainen turned around and asked, I'll run it again with the quantum computer. It's already 9 o'clock, Kai Xiaozhu said hurriedly. Even if we use quantum computing, it will probably take until tomorrow morning. We can't leave anyone there. It's okay. Yu Ainen smiled and sorted out the experimental data and records at hand, then stood up holding the heavy materials. The data will come out sooner, so that we can know which step went wrong. Kai Xiaozhu looked at Yu Ainen's hurriedly leaving back and couldn't help but sigh. Our little sister is really energetic. It's not that I'm full of energy, it's that junior sister Yu's adoptive mother passed away suddenly. My sister was trying to handle the family affairs before, and now I'm suddenly relaxed. If I don't find something to do, I will fall into sadness. Li Weilan stood in front of the water dispenser. When my grandmother passed away, I was like this. I couldn't be idle. If I was idle, I would be very sad. Then wait until junior sister finishes checking the data. Let's find her more work. Don't let her be idle, said Kai Xiaozhu. You can change your name to Kai Baopi. A senior brother turned around and joked. Let's not let the little junior sister be alone. It's always easier to get into a bad mood when there are people around. Senior brother, remember to organize the group. Ko Qingyan, who was looking down at the microscope, said with a smile, Our teacher has brought back Gu Yuxing from abroad. With him here, how can we be worried that it won't be lively? But I heard the old man on the phone this afternoon, and it seems that Gu Yuxing can't come to the lab until after the Chinese New Year. Kai Xiaozhu curled his lips. I heard that he was helping his cousin prepare a ceremony to propose to his girlfriend, and then visit relatives during the Chinese New Year. He didn't pay any attention to the lab at all. Yu Ainen stayed in the laboratory all night and did not return to the dormitory. At dawn, he saw a text message from an Huanyan with an emoticon package, saying that she had gone to school. She stood in front of the printer, looking at the data that kept printing out, put her phone on the printer, and pinched the back of her neck tiredly. Chapter 37 Pregnancy. Several messages suddenly popped up in the WeChat window one after another. She opened her phone and took a look. It was a group message from the laboratory. Ko Ching-yin was flooding the group with messages. Handsome Ko. I'm going to be a father. Handsome Ko. I'm going to be a father. Handsome Ko. Don't sleep. Get up and congratulate me. I'm going to be a father. Blue sky. If you are the father, then you are the father. We are not the fathers. It's so early in the morning. Senior brother, please don't go crazy in the group. I just want to lie down. Senior sister Kai is pregnant. Congratulations to senior sister Kai and senior brother. When will the wedding be held? We are waiting to drink in the wedding wine. Just want to rest. Congratulations to senior brother. Congratulations to senior sister Kai. Handsome Ko. I'm taking half a day off today to get the marriage certificate. Don't worry. You'll be there for the wedding. And then, congratulations to senior brother. Congratulations to senior sister Kai. After replying to the message, Yuanin suddenly thought of the night with Lyn Jinrong and Haiqing. Her heart was beating a little fast. Although she was drugged, Yuanin clearly remembered every detail of her time with Lyn Jinrong. They didn't seem to be using any contraceptive measures. After having sex with Lyn Jinrong, her mind was in a mess. In addition to her inexperience, and with so many things happening later, she did not take emergency contraceptive pills. The only sound in the room was the sound of the printer printing. She held the printer with both hands and fell into another kind of panic. Getting pregnant shouldn't be that easy in one go, right? Her menstrual period hasn't arrived yet, but she should be fine when her period comes next week. For a whole week, Yuanin was running data and occasionally saw news and pop-up news that Lyn Group President Lyn Jinrong and his team were discussing chip cooperation abroad. In recent years, the development of domestic science and technology has been constrained by atomic-level chips, but this shortcoming cannot be made up in a short period of time. This is why Lyn Jinrong personally led the team to discuss chips. In the news photo, Lyn Jinrong, dressed in a slim suit, sat on the side of the conference room where the small Chinese flag and the small flag with the Lyn Group's logo were placed. He looked calmly at the equally elite foreigners opposite him and listened attentively to the team executives talking to him in a low voice, with a noble and steady temperament. With his three-dimensional facial features and powerful aura in his every move, he stands out like a standout in this huge conference room. She looked through the comments below, where some people analyzed whether this cooperation would be successful and the impact it would have on my country's development if successful. Some people are pessimistic about this cooperation. There were also many people calling Lyn Jinrong husband. At Xiaolu Yizhangse. Oh my god, if it weren't for the pop-up news, I wouldn't have known that the president of Lyn Group is so handsome. It's a pity that he is not a star with his face and figure. At Huimuru Shun, the above person shouldn't be so ridiculous. Between the Lyn Group and being a celebrity, which one do you want? At Tongwa Dodoa Wow. Wow. I declare that this is my new husband. My husband is so handsome. He is so handsome that I can't close my legs. At Yoyu Zuri Haochu. Oh my god. He's wearing a suit, tie, and gold-rimmed glasses. He's tall and has a good proportion of legs. He's right on my XP. The comments below were even more biased, with most people praising Lyn Jinrong for her beauty, wealth, and talent. There were also people who shouted that they wanted to give birth to a baby for Lyn Jinrong. Yuanin locked her phone screen. My menstrual period hasn't come yet. She pinched her eyebrows and advised herself not to be too nervous. After waking up from the car accident, her menstrual period was not as regular as before, and there were also delays. 28 Yunqing is going to celebrate the Little New Year, so 27 Professor Dong gave everyone a holiday. This year, without Anton, Yuanin and her sister celebrated the New Year together. After burying Aunt Anne's ashes, they packed up and went to Yunqing before school started. Yuanin listed the house with an agency for rent. Although the rent in a small place is not high, it can help subsidize in Huanyan's living expenses. And Huanyan was very happy about transferring to a new school. She did not feel reluctant to leave her previous school, and even had a vague sense of relief. Yuanin sent in Huanyan to the dormitory of Yunqing No. 1 Middle School. She felt relieved when she saw that in Huanyan's roommates were all very nice girls. Remembering that my period had been delayed for almost a month, I bought a pregnancy test stick on the way back to the dormitory from Yunqing No. 1 Middle School. The first time she used it, Yuanin spent a long time studying before she found the correct way to use it. 5 minutes later, when she saw the 2 bars above, her head buzzed and her face turned pale. How can I get it right in one try? Yuanin, who didn't believe it, went out and bought a few more pregnancy test sticks, but the results were the same. She stared at the row of parallel bar pregnancy tests on the sink, then turned and leaned against the sink, biting her knuckles. Lyn Jinrong seems to still be abroad and hasn't returned yet. Even if Lyn Jinrong was in China, what would happen if she told Lyn Jinrong? It still needs to be aborted. The phone vibrates. Seeing that it was senior sister Kai Xiaozhu, Yuanin answered, "Senior sister Kai. And there will be a new person coming to our laboratory soon. The old man asked me to call you over and introduce you to us," said Kai Xiaozhu. Kai Xiaozhu has always called Professor Dong little old man, probably because he has known Professor Dong since childhood. "Okay, I'll be right there." After hanging up the phone, Yuanin threw the pregnancy test stick into the trash can, put on her coat, and went out. When she arrived at the laboratory, Professor Dong was already introducing Gu Yuxing to everyone. Seeing Yuanin coming in, Professor Dong said to Gu Yuxing, "This is Yuanin." Gu Yuxing turned to look at Yuanin. She felt that Yuanin looked familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had seen her before. She smiled and extended her hand. "Hello, I'm Gu Yuxing." Gu Yuxing knew almost all the other people in the lab. He had seen them before in a competition. Since he saw that they were a Chinese team, Gu Yuxing came to their team to eat and drink. After a few visits, we became familiar with each other. "Hello." Yuanin shook Gu Yuxing's hand back. "I think I've seen you somewhere," Gu Yuxing said, adding, "It's definitely not a flirtation. This is the first time I've returned to China since I was a child, but you look familiar to me." During this period, Yuanin became quite popular on the internet, so it was normal to have seen her, so she didn't take it seriously and just smiled. "Hey, as soon as you arrived, you started chatting up our junior sister Yu. Did you know that our junior sister Yu is single?" Kuching Yin hooked his arm around Gu Yuxing's neck, as if he was very familiar with her. He smiled and said to Yuanin, "Junior sister Yu, this guy is also single, and has been single since birth." Gu Yuxing's ears turned red when she heard that, and she nudged Kuching Yin with her elbow. "Don't talk nonsense." Professor Dong was very happy to see everyone getting along well. "Yuxing, you just arrived at the lab, so follow your senior sister Kai to familiarize yourself with the data. I have to go to the provincial government for a meeting. You guys continue the experiment with your senior brother. Call me if you have any questions." Ever since Kai Xiaozhu became pregnant, the task of organizing the data was given to Kai Xiaozhu, and she was no longer allowed to enter the laboratory. As soon as Professor Dong left, Kai Xiaozhu immediately asked Gu Yuxing out of curiosity, "I heard that after you returned to China, you went to Haicheng and helped your cousin propose marriage. How big a proposal must it be, with a genetics genius like you?" Chapter 38 Habit. Not really. It's just that after my mom and my dad went abroad to get married, she never contacted our relatives and friends. After I came back, I went to Haicheng to meet some relatives for my mom. They were so enthusiastic that I didn't come here until now. Gu Yuxing smiled and scratched his head. "My cousin just asked me to help make a gene book for the woman. The handsome guy who just drove you here should not be your cousin, right?" Li Weilan's eyes lit up. "He's my cousin," Gu Yuxing said with a smile. "What a shame." Li Weilan looked regretful. "He's so handsome, but he's already taken." "Really? Is he very handsome?" Kai Xiaozhu came over to gossip. "What does it matter to you how handsome he is, pregnant mother?" Kuching Yin rolled his eyes at Kai Xiaozhu. Hearing the word pregnant mother, Yuanin subconsciously held her belly with an unsightly look on her face. "Let's go into the lab. Get to work." Kuching Yin put on his white coat and saw that Yuanin looked pale. "Are you feeling unwell? If you are, go back to the dormitory and have a rest. Don't force yourself." Everyone in the laboratory knows Yuanin, who is the kind of person who never says a word even when she is sick. "Nothing." Yuanin smiled and said, "I just sent in Yin to school today. I was busy preparing things last night and didn't get enough rest. I'll just have a cup of coffee later." After spending half a day in the laboratory, Yuanin had no appetite for lunch. She sat under the eaves at the door of the laboratory, facing the sun with her eyes closed, thinking about what to do next. Feeling someone sitting on the bench next to her, Yuanin opened her eyes. Gu Yuxing smiled and handed Yuanin a bottle of milk. "You've been sitting here for a long time without eating. Have some milk." "Thank you." Yuanin took the milk. "You go in first. I'll be in soon." "It's okay. I'm waiting for my cousin here. My laptop was left in his car, and he brought it to me. I'm waiting for him here." Gu Yuxing smiled with curved eyebrows. He was very fair, with fluffy curly hair, like a beautiful boy who walked out of a comic book. The wheels rolled over the manhole cover with a bang, and the black SUV stopped in front of the laboratory building. The passenger door was pushed open, and long legs and black short boots stepped out and stepped on the ground. Fu Nanchen walked out of the car with his arms hanging in front of his chest and raised the laptop in his hand. Gu Yuxing. Yu Ainen's grip on the milk suddenly tightened. Obviously, Fu Nanchen also saw Yu Ainen. Their eyes met, and Yu Ainen was stunned. She never imagined that Gu Yuxing was Fu Nanchen's cousin. In all these years in the Fu family, she had never seen Gu Yuxing. After Aunt Anne's death, she no longer had the same love for Fu Nanchen as before. In fact, there is only regret left. I regret having fallen in love with Fu Nanchen, and I regret bringing Fu Nanchen back to Donjiang Town. Even after watching the video, Yu Ainen knew. Fu Nanchen did want to save Aunt Anne when the car hit her. Yu Ainen still couldn't remain calm. Here, Gu Yuxing sat steadily and waved at Fu Nanchen, seemingly not intending to get up and take it. Fu Nanchen quickly moved his eyes away from Yu Ainen, walked up to Gu Yuxing as if he didn't know her, and threw the notebook to him. Why aren't you being lazy to death? I've been busy writing a book of genes for my future sister-in-law, and you just walked a few steps to bring me the notebook. Be careful, or I'll complain to my sister-in-law. Gu Yuxing said. I'll go back to the lab first. Yu Ainen stood up and said to Gu Yuxing, thank you for the milk. She originally thought that after this accident, she would never meet Fu Nanchen again. But at 7:30 in the evening, when she came out of the laboratory and was about to go to Yunqing No. 1 Middle School to pick up in Huanyin for dinner, she saw Fu Nanchen's black SUV parked downstairs of the laboratory building. Yu Ainen wrapped her scarf and walked down the steps in front of the laboratory building. Just after she passed the black SUV, she heard Fu Nanchen calling her. Yu Ainen. Yu Ainen paused, took a breath, and turned around. Fu Nanchen leaned against the off-road vehicle with the driver's door open, a cigarette in his hand. Seeing Yu Ainen turning around with her hands in her down jacket, he put out the cigarette with his boot and walked up to Yu Ainen. Believe it or not, I didn't know Gu Yuxing was your cousin, and I didn't know your cousin would come before I came to the lab. Yu Ainen has a criminal record. After she woke up after lying down for 2 years, she wanted to awaken Fu Nanchen's memory, so she did a lot of things to get close to him. But this time not. I know. Fu Nanchen stood only one step away from Yu Ainen. I'm sorry about Aunt Anne's matter. Yu Ainen tightened her hands in her pockets. This was the first time he apologized to her since he lost his memory. Under the dim street lights, Fu Nanchen frowned. He looked at Yu Ainen's calm and indifferent eyes and recalled the pair of bright black eyes that had captured his heart when he secretly kissed Yu Ainen that summer. He suddenly felt irritated. I really didn't think that pushing on the sidewalk would be dangerous. Fu Nanchen said in a hard tone. I was too harsh in my words that day. No matter what, it was me who pushed Ainen. Are you done? Yu Ainen asked. Fu Nanchen didn't understand what Yu Ainen meant. Fu Nanchen, we have no relationship anymore. When we meet again, we should treat each other as strangers. Yu Ainen said calmly and turned to leave. Fu Nanchen grabbed Yu Ainen's arm and said, I have something to ask you. Yu Ainen pulled out her arm. You ask. We didn't have any sex that night, did we? Fu Nanchen has been thinking about this problem these days. Since the medicine given by Yi Changming is not a true medicine, he cannot be sure whether what Yu Ainen said is true. In particular, when he asked, Yu Ainen's initial answer was whether you hope to have it or not. What do I have to say to make you believe that we didn't sleep that night? Do you have to let me sleep with someone else before you can feel at ease? Yu Ainen said in a bad tone, her chest heaving violently with anger. Fu Nanchen's lips slightly opened. I know everything you and Yi Changming said. I drank the drugged wine as you wished, and left Haiqing and never appeared in front of you in Do Yuji again. Fu Nanchen, what else do you have to do so that you don't have to see you again? Fu Nanchen looked at Yu Ainen's back as she turned and left decisively. He opened his lips, but ultimately failed to call out to her. He was so angry that he turned around, opened the car door, got in and slammed the door shut, knowing that Yu Ainen is here. But when his mother asked him to send his cousin to Yunqing University, he still came. The person I hate the most and don't want to see the most is Yu Ainen. Mingming hated the fact that she stuck to him like a dogskin plaster. It must be because of habit. I was used to having Yu Ainen following me around, so I felt uncomfortable without him suddenly. I don't know if it's because there are suddenly 2 more memories about Yu Ainen in my mind. Fu Nanchen actually wanted to know about his past with Yu Ainen.